What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio and welcome to Stat Diggers. We're going to take a deep dive into UFC London. We have Tom Aspinall going against Curtis Blaydes in a 14-fight card that has a ton of fun fights on. I'm looking forward to it. I think there's going to be some violence and cannot wait to break it down with you in the chat. And you, Uncle Weezy. Weezy, what is up? You looking forward to the card?
This is a great card. I mean, there is so many great violent spots on this card, and every time they go to London and they put these popular British fighters on the card, the crowd just goes nuts. And we know lately with what we've been dealing with COVID, it's just a special feeling in the air when there are live fans, and those London fans, man, they bring it every damn time. So when you look at the main event, when you look at the undercard, I mean, every fight on this card has the potential to be a real banger. So I'm looking forward to breaking this down with you, Brady, in the chat, everyone here on Pub Sports Radio, because this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is a card I've been circling for months. Like, I actually made a bet on this card that I placed on June 5th, which was at this point a long time ago. So as you guys can tell, I'm definitely looking forward to it. We'll do a quick recap of last night and then we'll get into it. I'll start off. It was my lightest week of the year in terms of unit sizing and my second lightest week ever. And I wish it was a little bit lighter. My night really all came down to the Simone Jack Shore over 2.5 rounds. My biggest bet of the night, 1.25 units on that over minus 210. I thought it would go over, obviously, and if it did not go over, I kind of thought it would be Jack Shore getting the finish. I did not watch the fight. I hate watching fights when I have an over. Good thing I didn't, or I would have been really upset there. But yeah, looked at my phone, saw it finish, and saw that Ricky Simone finished Jack Shore, which wasn't really expecting that. The next bet I had Sumadarji to win inside the distance half a unit plus 130. Probably my biggest bad beat of the year, but they're definitely going to happen there. Went back and watched it. Sumadarji hurt Matt Schnell 6 different times. The ref was close to stepping in, said, fight or fight back. Sumadarji was just a little flurry away from finishing that fight. Props to Matt Schnell for sticking in and finishing the fight. The next bet was Li Jingliang, half a unit, plus 144. That was good. Knocked out Muslim Salikov, which was great. I'm not a big fan of Muslim Salikov. And then I end the night with, once again, another bad beat. Ortega inside the distance, half a unit. Ortega, of course, gets hurt. So hopefully getting all the bad beats out of the way. Last card, because this card I have 10 units on already. 3 really big bets, and I'm looking at placing another really big bet once this line comes out. So, Weezy, I know you as well had a very light card. I think maybe even lighter than me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I was out of town all week for a wedding, had an amazing time. It was the weather was beautiful, really great house that we were staying at. So we had a great time. But as a result of that, I had to get out of town like early Tuesday. So, yeah, it was a light week on content for me, and it was a light week on betting. My only straight bet was just the Bill Algeo, Herbert Burns under 2.5 plus 105. I cashed that for 1 unit. And then I had a 1.5 unit parlay with Punahele Soriano, who was Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week this week. And unfortunately, I parlayed him with the fight goes to decision for Shore against Simon. I just did not see Ricky Simon getting a finish over Jack Shore, undefeated, 14-0. But, you know, congrats to Ricky Simon. What a performance to be able to finish an undefeated guy. That's just fantastic. So wound up losing 0.45 units on the only 2 bets that I made. But the ass shaving of the week came through, and there's already some spots sticking out on this card. So I'm getting back to business and ready to get into this pool neck deep here and throw some money around.
Neck deep? Don't you mean balls deep?
Well, we're going even deeper than that this week, my friend, because violence is the word of the week. And this way I don't have to have even more hairs turn gray as I wait for these fights to go the full 15. I see a lot of these finishing inside the distance, so I figure this will be the healthier card to get neck deep, even further than balls deep, because I'm ready to get some money on violence bets here because they're so much easier to root for.
Absolutely. And I was scheduled to get a haircut today, but I decided I might as well just keep my hair while I can, because if shit keeps happening like the Sumadarji fight last night, I will not have hair much longer. So I'm going to keep my hair and for another couple weeks there. So let's shout out the chat real quick before we get started. As always, if you guys can please hit the like button and subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Live streams throughout the week, all great guys on the channel. Let's see, first one in the chat, Chronic Combat Conversation. What is up, guys? How you doing? We got Headley one in the chat. Sean V, we have Modern Day Shimon. You guys were in here early, like 40 minutes early, so appreciate you guys. We got Cole in the chat as well. We got Jack, Victor, Mushroom looking for some violence. We got Mark in the chat. We got Ron in the chat. Gerald. We have Mr. D. We have Dan. What's up, Dan? Dan Goldstein. We have Jay. We have Roy. The list keeps going on and on. Sloppy. All you guys. Appreciate you guys. Tony as well. If I didn't name you, I'm sorry. There's just so much going on in the chat. Trying to scroll through here. Justin, I see you. Jay, I see you. Tim in the chat as well. What is up, Tim? Appreciate all you guys. And we do have a dono as well. Mark, I had a massive night and wanted to make sure I show you guys some love. Thanks for all the hard work. Appreciate you, Mark. Glad you had a great night and hopefully another great night at UFC in London. What's up, Alex? I see you as well. We got Wiz with the dono as well. Appreciate you, gentlemen. We appreciate you, Wiz, for hanging out and appreciate the dono a ton. Let us make some money this week for UFC London. And let us start with the first fight of the night. So this is not the official bout order yet, just refreshed UFC stats. So looks like they have not placed this fight anywhere officially, but as of now, we'll talk about this one first. So we have Ludovic Klein going against Mason Jones. We have Ludovic Klein, 27 years old, 5'7" with a 72-inch reach, going against Mason Jones, 27 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach. So Mason Jones is going to be the bigger fighter. He's going to have a 3-inch height advantage here. Ludovic Klein is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Shane Young, won that fight by knockout, lost a decision to Mike Trezano, got submitted by Nate Landwehr, and then won a split decision against Devontae Smith. As far as Mason Jones, he did make his debut against Mike Davis, lost a very competitive decision against him, had that no contest against Alan Patrick in a fight where he was on his way to getting the finish. Eye poke, and the Patrick kind of called it quits there. And then he had a win over David Onama by decision, which is aging very, very well. He is 3-1 and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights. So this is a fight where Ludovic Klein was supposed to fight Ignacio Bahamondes next week at UFC 277. Bahamondes had visa issues. He had to pull out. And then in steps Mason Jones on this card at UFC London. And, this is a good matchup. I think it's going to be very fun. Mason Jones, I don't think he's ever been in a boring fight. And I also do like Ludovic Klein. I think he's a really good striker, but I do think he has a lot of holes in his game that Mason Jones is definitely going to exploit. And like most fights on this card, we have a very juiced line. Mason Jones is a very big favorite here, but I can definitely see why. Weezy, curious to your thoughts on the first fight of the night.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I mean, because all Mason Jones fights are really fun. But, both of these guys are only 27 years old. So they both got their whole careers in front of them. And they both got more than 10 pro fights. So they're both young. They're both experienced. In particular, Klein's got 22 pro fights, but only 9 more minutes in the pro cage in comparison to Jones, because Jones' average fight time, 10 minutes. For Klein, it's 6.32. Klein's been a very good finisher in his wins. And Klein's been doing this for about almost 3 years longer than Mason Jones. The UFC level experience just slightly edges Klein, but the finish stats definitely edge Klein, as he's finishing 88% of his 18 wins. That's 8 by submission, 8 by knockout, only 2 by decision. While Mason Jones is finishing by knockout 36% of the time, submission 27% of the time. Mason's never been finished. He's going to be by far the more durable fighter here, as Ludovic Klein has been finishing 3 of 4 pro losses and in 1 of his 2 UFC losses. Klein is absorbing more strikes than he lands at the UFC level, while for Jones, he's landing more than he absorbs. And he's also throwing a lot more volume, Brady. Almost 15 significant strike attempts per minute for Mason Jones, and 10.53 is what his opponents are throwing, which is wild because Mason Jones is spending almost 40% of his fights in control time positions for or against. So in the 60% of the time that he's at striking distance, this dude is just, spamming volume and out-voluming his opponents at an alarming rate. I definitely do like Jones's striking here, and it is a southpaw versus orthodox matchup here. And we know Ludovic Klein is very dangerous on the feet, especially when he's throwing that big left head kick that he's known for and that he's knocked a lot of dudes out with. So both of these guys are going to be very good and dangerous on the feet. And because it's southpaw versus orthodox, those power weapons for both of them are going to be flying pretty often. And then if we look at the grappling, both of these guys are finding ways to win minutes in the grappling exchanges as well, as we've seen Klein attempt 11 takedowns in 4 fights, get 4 of them. He's averaging 1.38 per 15 minutes, and he's out controlling his opponents about 25% to 9% and showing 80% takedown defense in his own right. So Klein, has some nice grappling numbers here, but Jones's are even more impressive. If we look, he's getting his takedowns at a 52.38% rate. He's averaging 4.43 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's out controlling his opponents 36.4% to 2.8%. So it's more than a 10-to-1 ratio that Mason's out controlling his opponents here. And he's also showing right around 80% takedown defense, just like Ludovic Klein. But while Klein is out controlling his opponents at like a 2.5-to-1 ratio, like I said, Jones out controlling his opponents at better than a 10-to-1 ratio. So, as good as Klein's striking numbers are, Jones's are probably a little bit better. And as good as Klein's grappling numbers are, Jones's are probably a little bit better. And then if we look at the ratio for these guys and their overall strength to schedule, it edges Jones 1.33 to 1. And the total fights also edges Jones just by a little bit. And Jones's win is against the guy whose only loss is to Mason Jones. So outside of that, David Onama's 2-0. So we can't even compute a ratio in Jones's wins. While for Klein, you got wins over Shane Young, Devontae Smith. Solid wins, but, and then for Jones, it's basically a win over Patrick. He's shaving his ass until he poked him in the eye. And then the win over Onama, which was a good one, but it was a close fight. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a banger. It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I'm definitely leaning Jones here, but I don't think that that's a surprise, and the bookies aren't surprised by it either.
Yep, absolutely. I like Jones as well. And I was big on Klein coming into the UFC. Like, I really like what I saw from this guy, but in the UFC, just have not been impressed at all, really. He's a really good striker, but I mean, his volume's so low, only attempting 6.39 significant strikes per minute. You got to believe that's going to be a serious problem against Mason Jones, who's so much higher volume. I guess the one thing I don't like about Mason Jones is the fact that he is willing to eat punches with his face, and he definitely has the toughness to do that. But, Klein has that head kick. That kind of scares me. But other than that, Jones should be out voluming this guy. And I think it was Headley one that said in the chat, he did not deal well with the pressure of Nate Landwehr. And that's all Mason Jones is going to do. He's going to pressure Klein. He's going to make him uncomfortable. If this fight was at range and if this fight was at Klein's pace, yeah, I feel like he'd have success here against a very hittable Mason Jones. But, Jones is going to come in here. He's going to make it a war. He's going to throw a ton of strikes. He's going to mix in the wrestling, make this a really grinding fight. And I don't like the cardio of Klein as the fight goes on. So I'm kind of leaning Jones inside the distance, like round 2 or 3. I think round 1 should be very competitive. I think Klein will definitely have his moments, but I think Jones does eventually take over and either gets this fight down to the mat and finds a finish or just kind of knocks him out on the feet. I think he's going to break Ludovic Klein here, just like Landwehr did. But we do see that Mason Jones is a big favorite. He opened up minus 325, and that was just kind of recent there. It's no line movement yet. And then Klein is plus 275, and this is the only fight that does not have any props yet. So I don't know what the fight goes and doesn't go is, but I guess I'd slightly lean on the fight doesn't go, but it's probably going to be very overpriced. And I slightly lean to Jones inside the distance. Any thought on that line, Weezy? We got a wide line, but that is the case for 90% of these fights.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe a finish only for Jones because Klein's been finishing 3 of 4 pro losses. And I mean, we saw Mason Jones in that Mike Davis fight. And by the way, what's happened to Mike Davis? Where has he been? I can't wait to see that dude fight again. I hope it's sometime soon because that guy is so exciting, and he was such a great dance partner for Mason Jones. That was an all-timer, man. Maybe the best Contender Series fight of all time. But this should be Jones, because he's so dominant and he's so tough. Like you said, he will eat punches with his face, but it's because he trusts his chin, and he has good reason to trust it. This dude is incredibly tough. So, yeah, maybe Jones inside the distance, maybe Jones finish only, even though Ludovic is very dangerous. And no matter how tough you are, if you get kicked in the head at the right spot, you're going down. So this is going to be a fun way to start the night if this winds up being the first fight.
Yeah, I think it will be. Curious to see where they put this fight, or if they just keep it at the first fight of the night. Either way, definitely looking forward to this fight. It should be an absolute banger. Both guys are very exciting and dangerous. Let us move on to the next fight. We have Nathaniel Wood going against Charles Rosa. We have Nathaniel Wood, 29 years old, 5'6", with a 69-inch reach, going against Rosa, 35 years old, 5'9", with a 69-inch reach. It's going to be Wood, who's 6 years younger, and it's going to be Rosa with a 3-inch height advantage. Nathaniel Wood is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, had a submission win against Andre Ewell, a submission win against Jose Quinones, a knockout loss against John Dodson, a decision win against John Castaneda, and then a decision win, very competitive fight against Casey Kenny his last time out. As far as Charles Rosa, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a decision win against Kevin Aguilar, a decision loss against Derek Minner, a decision win against Justin James, a decision loss against Damon Jackson, a decision loss against TJ Brown. I think this is a terrible matchup for Charles Rosa, and he's actually stepping in on somewhat short notice, not like extremely short notice, but Nathaniel Wood was supposed to have a different opponent, and Charles Rosa is stepping in here, I think on like a couple weeks notice, but still, I mean, this is a tough matchup to take for Charles Rosa. I feel like the writing is on the wall on how to beat Charles Rosa, and that is literally just take him down and, you know, stay out of submission. I mean, we saw TJ Brown go out there, the guy with a terrible haircut, go out there and take down Rosa, control him, win a 3-round decision. We saw, you know, Damon Jackson do it. We saw even Justin James have success taking down and holding down Rosa. We saw Derek Minner who did it, a guy that has, you know, 5 minutes of cardio. So I think Nathaniel Wood could absolutely implement that game plan if he wants to, but I really don't even think he needs to. I think Nathaniel Wood can use his takedown defense, keep this on the feet, and on the feet, it's Nathaniel Wood, and it's not even close. I think this is a horrible matchup for Charles Rosa. I'm really struggling to find the path to victory for him. A couple things you got to worry about with Nathaniel Wood is his chin. He's been hurt a ton. He's been knocked out a lot. But that's not really a worry against Charles Rosa, who has 0 knockdowns in the UFC, 0 knockdowns in 12 fights. So that's kind of off the table there. I think Wood's better everywhere the fight goes. I guess my only slight concern is if Wood does get this fight down to the mat, he has been submitted 2 times. So that's my one concern. But, you know, outside of a Charles Rosa submission off his back, I think Wood kind of rolls here. So I like Wood. Another line where he's a huge, huge favorite, but it's just really hard to find a path to victory for Charles Rosa here. Weezy, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, you said you hate this matchup for Rosa. I don't know if there's many good matchups out there for Charles Rosa at the UFC level anymore, man. I just don't know what this guy's that good at. You know, I think some of these guys are a little bit of from a bygone era, you know, where you could catch somebody in a triangle from your back, you know, because you're a black belt and because they were a striker. I mean, those days are over, and it's just become painfully evident that you could pretty much beat this guy any way you want to beat him. Let's just briefly go over the numbers here. Wood's 6 years younger. Everything else is about the same, but Rosa does switch stances. Very close in pro experience, but Rosa has a few more minutes in the cage. Rosa has 6 more UFC fights and about 100 more minutes in the UFC cage. So Rosa's much more experience at the UFC level. Rosa, a 78% finish rate as a pro, but really he's only finished 2 of his 5 UFC wins. And I think Manny Bermudez is one of those finishes. I don't even know who the other one was, but it was a long time ago. And, you know, Nathaniel Wood has finished 3 of his 4 UFC wins via submission. Charles Rosa just doesn't get finished much. He's been knocked out once in 7 UFC losses, while Nathaniel Wood has been finished in 4 of his 5 UFC losses, pro losses, twice by submission, twice by knockout. And in his 2 UFC losses, he's been knocked out in both of them. But the striking is going to be Nathaniel Wood all day. We're talking about a guy that's throwing about 13.5 significant strike attempts per minute, and his opponents are only throwing about 9.5. So about 4 more significant strike attempts per minute. He's landing almost 2 more significant strikes per minute. Has 1 knockdown in 6 fights, while Charles Rosa has never knocked anyone down. Charles Rosa absorbs about a half more significant strike per minute than he lands. He's only landing at 37% accuracy, and he does outvolume his opponents a little bit, but the defensive numbers, Wood close to 54%, while Rosa, it's a little bit over 48%. both of these guys have been knocked down, but it's Rosa getting knocked down 0.27 times per 15 minutes, and it's 0.22 times per 15 minutes for Wood. So definitely give Wood the striking advantage here, and they have the same reach. And then when it comes to the grappling, Rosa gets his takedowns at 37.5% rate. He's getting about 1.5 per 15 minutes, and he attempts 1 submission per 15 minutes. And his fights are taking place in control time positions more than half of his cage time, which is significant because, he's been in the cage for 164 minutes. So we do know that a lot of Rosa's fights take place on the ground. For Wood, it's only about 25% of Wood's 70 minutes in the UFC cage that have been taking place in control time positions for or against. So Wood seems to be a little more comfortable at striking range, while Rosa definitely seems to be a little more comfortable when he's grappling. So I think Wood can keep this fight standing. He's got 75% takedown defense, and he's been controlled less than 8% of his UFC career. While Rosa folds like a lawn chair if you try to take this guy down, man. He's got less than 40% takedown defense. He's been taken down 30 times in only 12 fights and has been controlled about 3/8 of the cage time that he's been in there. And then in addition to that, you think, Rosa's a little more experienced. He's been around the block a few more times. Nah, man. Wood's been fighting the better competition. 1.32 ratio to 1.19, 8.5 total fights to 6.75. And then when you look at the wins, Rosa is beating a guy with an average record of 1.8 wins and 3 losses at the UFC level. So even though he has 5 UFC wins, you're going to be struggling to find a name in there that's a signature win. While Nathaniel Wood is beating guys with winning records and over 6 total fights. So he's got better wins. He's even got better losses, having lost to the more experienced competition while the ratio is close. And, one thing that Nathaniel Wood can boast is that he didn't lose to TJ Brown. He didn't get his ass shaved by a guy who has horrible fight IQ and an even worse haircut. So we can really hang our hat on that, if we're going to be on the Wood side here. Look, Charles Rosa is very durable, Brady. So I think maybe if you're looking for a way to play this, maybe playing Nathaniel Wood by decision. If you're just, and who would want to pay -400 at this point or wherever it is?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe, if anything, like Wood as a parlay piece, or like the decision is -115. I would kind of like plus money on that. But yeah, Rosa, like one thing he is really good at is not getting finished. He got finished once, and that was, I believe, Shane Burgos in that 3rd round, and he wasn't even really out. But Burgos definitely put it on him. Yeah, other than that, TJ Brown wasn't able to submit him. Damon Jackson wasn't able to submit him. Justin James wasn't able to knock him out. Derek Minner, all those guys are very, very dangerous. This guy's, and Bryce Mitchell as well.
Yeah,
it is very hard to submit Charles Rosa. So yeah, I think Nathaniel Wood by decision, probably the best way to play this. We see that Wood did open up -350, currently -450. Charles Rosa opened up +285. He is currently +350, and I can't argue the line. I think it's about right. It's really hard to find a path to victory for Charles Rosa. So yeah, Rosa by decision -1. Wood by decision -115. That's kind of where I'm looking at.
Yeah, me too. If Wood loses this fight, and he has been finished in 4 or 5 losses, you get the feeling it's kind of like a banana peel type of thing where maybe he just makes a dumb mistake on the ground, and gets choked out or something like that. But you got to believe it's going to be hard for Rosa to win minutes and find moments to win this fight. So yeah, I'm going with Wood by decision.
Absolutely. All right, let us move on to the next fight. We have Nicholas Dalby going against Claudio Silva. We have Dalby, who is 37 years old, 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. Silva, 39 years old, 5'11" with a 71-inch reach. Both guys up there. Dalby's going to be 2 years younger than Claudio Silva, who does turn 39, or does turn 40 pretty soon here. And then Dalby's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. Claudio Silva is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. A submission win against Nordine Taleb, a submission win against Danny Roberts, a submission win against Cole Williams, a decision loss against James Krause, and a decision loss against Court McGee. I think Claudio Silva was on like a 14-fight win streak at one point, and then he's lost 2 in a row here. Nicholas Dalby is 2-2 and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights, a decision loss against Peter Sabata, a decision win against Alex Oliveira, a no contest where he got a club and subbed against Jesse Ronson, a decision win against Daniel Rodriguez, and then a decision loss to Tim Means. Should be an interesting fight here. Claudio Silva, he's on a 2-fight skid. The thing with Claudio Silva is he's very, very dangerous early. This guy's ground game is no joke. It's just as the fight goes on, he definitely slows down. Not to the point where he's like completely done, like say, for example, a recent example, Herbert Burns. He's still able to go out there and fight. It's just not the best look in the world. I feel like Claudio Silva is pretty much sub 1 or bust in this fight. I think Nicholas Dalby, although I'm not in love with the striking, he's definitely going to be the better striker. He's definitely more technical. Claudio Silva just wings big hooks, and he has a lot of power with those. But I think Dalby should be able to keep this on the feet for the most part, survive that first round, and take over, win those second and third rounds there, and ultimately win a decision here. So I like Dalby. Again, another really wide line. But I will say that Claudio Silva, he's really good. He's really good early, and he'll definitely have his moments. If he does get this fight down to the mat, could be an early submission for Claudio Silva. But I think Dalby takes this one. I think the cardio is going to be a big difference here, but not running to the window to lay this price tag on Dalby. Weezy, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I like Dalby here. He's got, he's younger. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He's got 9 more pro fights. He's got about 200 more minutes in the pro cage. He's actually, even though he's the younger man, he's been doing this for about 3.5 years longer than Claudio Silva has. 1 more UFC level fight, about 30 more minutes in the UFC cage. Neither one of these dudes has ever been finished. Now, some of you guys are going to be saying, well, what about Jesse Ronson, finishing Dalby? And I say, come on, man. Jesse Ronson, he was hopped up on goofballs. You're not finishing a Dane, Brady. You're not finishing a Dane unless you put him to sleep or, look, the Ross Houston fight. If you guys have not seen Nicholas Dalby versus Ross Houston in Cage Warriors, it is the bloodiest fight in the history of MMA. It was literally stopped in the 3rd round by the referee Marc Goddard when just after he said, "This is ridiculous," because the entire canvas was covered with blood and it was like a slip and slide. So I'm liking the fight goes to decision for this fight. Even though Silva does have a very dangerous submission game, and even though he's getting older and tends to like to eat punches with his face, Nicholas Dalby has never won inside the distance at the UFC level, and neither one of these guys has ever been finished. So at -130, I think it's a pretty decent fight goes to decision bet. But yeah, like Brady said, Dalby should be the better striker here. Dalby is extremely tough. There's no quit in him. And Claudio Silva is a very good grappler. He spends about 50% of the 79 minutes he's been in the UFC cage in control time positions for or against. He has 50% takedown defense because he doesn't mind being on the ground. And he's attempted 55 takedowns in 7 fights. So Claudio is going to try to get this fight to the ground. And Nicholas Dalby has been taken down 8 times in 8 fights. He's getting taken down 1.11 times per 15 minutes. And he has had submissions attempted against him. And he's giving up more than 26% control time, which means that he's spending almost half of his fights in control time positions for or against. And that's in 108 minutes in the UFC cage. So over a good sample size. So if you are on that Dalby side, be very aware that Silva is going to try takedowns and that this fight probably is going to get into the grappling at some point, at which point Dalby's going to be fending off submissions and fighting for his life to stay out of that Brazilian jiu-jitsu game that Silva has and that he's very tricky and unorthodox with. If we look at the strength of schedule here, very similar. Silva's overall ratio just a little bit better. Dalby's opponent's just a little bit more experienced. The wins better for Nicholas Dalby, a 2.45 ratio in Nicholas Dalby's wins. His average win, the guy that he beats, has a record of 9 wins and 3.67 losses. So that's pretty wild. While Silva's got good wins too, man. 1.93 ratio in his wins, 5.4 wins, 2.8 losses is the average opponent with 8.2 total fights. So look, both of these guys have good strength of schedules. Both of these guys are very experienced. Both of these guys are pushing 40. Neither one of these guys has ever been finished. This fight probably does get into the grappling exchanges, but it should be Dalby winning on the feet. And Dalby can even win on the ground. He's got 9 takedowns in 8 fights. He's got 16% control time. He's getting more than a takedown per 15 minutes. And Silva will let you take him down. So, yeah, I mean, I like Dalby here, but this line is entirely too wide in my opinion. I think the way I'll be playing this is with an over 2.5 or with a fight goes.
Yeah, I don't think I'll have any money on this fight, but I do lean towards that over as well. Might be, sweaty, especially in the first round with Silva, and then maybe if he does gas out, maybe that third round. But yeah, both guys are just super tough. Claudio Silva, although he does slow down, this guy has a chin on him. So, and then Dalby's not much of a power puncher. So I do like that. The fight goes decision -130. The fight doesn't go to decision is -110. Nicholas Dalby is a -280 favorite. And Claudio Silva is +240. I'll be honest, I don't really want to trust Nicholas Dalby at -280. I'll pick him to win, but I just don't see myself having a bet on this fight. Dalby by decisions like +125. I saw Mushroom in the chat. Likes that round 3 decision, which could be something to look at as well. Silva inside the distance +485. I think his path to victory is probably round 1. I'm curious to see what the round 1 prop looks like, but the pick for me is Dalby. And then I would also lean over, but probably not going to bet it.
Yeah, I'm going to probably try to bet that over 2.5 or the fight goes. But yeah, the line is too wide. Even for a Dane like me, I can't get to that line on Nicholas Dalby. But, it's going to be a really fun fight. I mean, Dalby's always in fun fights. So can't wait for this one too. But the next one, oh boy.
I was just going to say, I mean, we're getting to the good stuff now, right? We have, oh boy, yeah. We have Mandy Bum going against Victoria Leonardo. We got Mandy Bum, 32 years old, 5'6" with a 70-inch reach. Victoria Leonardo, 32 years old, 5'5" with a 64-inch reach. We have Bum, who's going to have a 1-inch height advantage and a 6-inch reach advantage. Mandy Bum, she is 4-1 in her last 5 fights, a decision loss against Ariana Lipski her last time out. Victoria Leonardo is 2-3. In her last 5 fights, a knockout loss against Erin Blanchfield, a decision win against Liz Tracy, a knockout win on the Contender Series against Chelsea Hackett, a knockout loss against Manon Fiorot, a knockout loss against Melissa Gatto. I spent my Saturday night last night taping this fight, and I almost quit. I almost didn't show up today. I was disgusted at what I saw from these two. I also tagged the UFC to try to get them to cancel this fight. It looks like it's still on as of now. But, man, I watched the entire career of Mandy Bum. This is what we put ourselves through. And it was probably the worst experience of my life. And, typically when you watch a fighter, you can pick out some good things you like, some bad things you like. I swear I couldn't pick out one positive thing about Mandy Bum. Not one positive thing outside of she's long and rangy, and she will have a 6-inch reach advantage. And she's a favorite. And she's a favorite in a UFC fight, and it just makes no sense to me. I think the odds makers need arrested for making her a favorite. I mean, it was bad. At least with Victoria Leonardo, yeah, she's not great at all. And I feel like people are just really trying to fade her here. I feel like I was a lot more impressed with Leonardo. She has solid wrestling. I think she's going to be the more physically strong fighter in this matchup. She's going to be at a reach disadvantage, but Mandy Bum's striking is not great. And on top of that, the level of competition is just night and day with Victoria Leonardo. I mean, she made her debut against Manon Fiorot. And by the way, in that fight, the line actually opened up a pick 'em at -110. Ended up betting Fiorot like -140, something like that, but opened a pick 'em against Manon Fiorot. And then against Melissa Gatto, same thing. Victoria Leonardo opened up as a pick 'em against Melissa Gatto. Gatto and Fiorot are very good fighters. And I was impressed with Leonardo on the Contender Series as well. I feel like this is a very close fight, but I really strongly, as weird as it sounds, lean towards the dog and Leonardo. I never thought I would say this, but I'm just not sure what Mandy Bum's good at. I think Leonardo can make the striking very competitive. I think Leonardo can get this fight down to the mat. Mandy Bum's takedown defense outside the UFC looked horrible. She did stuff all 4 takedowns against Ariana Lipski, who's not known for her wrestling. I feel like Leonardo could win minutes against the cage, take this fight down to the mat, and Leonardo's grappling is actually pretty solid. So, I know I said I retired from betting on fights like these, Weezy, but this line just makes no sense at all. So curious to hear your thoughts on this one, Weezy. Probably a 1-800-GAMBLER fight.
So I have a confession to make. I bet on Mandy Bum in her UFC debut.
It's
Okay,
pronounced bum.
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 No, I know it is. I know it is. It's bum. I mean, believe me. But is it her or is it your Uncle Weezy that's the bigger bum for betting on this woman? Because she made Ariane Lipski look like like Valentina Shevchenko. I have never seen Ariane Lipski look that fierce, look that dominant. I mean, she just pillar to post. Look at this. She outstruck Mandy Bum 87-36. She outcontrolled Mandy Bum 30% to 3%, despite the fact that she got 0 takedowns. I mean, still was able to control her on the cage and on the ground a little bit for 3 out of 10 seconds of the fight. Now, and then it's the competition, the wins over Diana Tavares, Lily Panegyrico. I'm like, who the hell is Lily Panegyrico? I found she's from Luxembourg, Greet Ikut, Jade Masan Wong. I've never heard of any of these women. And these are the women that Mandy Bum has beaten. And Victoria Leonardo has 4 pro losses. Here's the names that she's lost to: Erin Blanchfield, Miranda Maverick, Manon Fierro, and Melissa Gatto. If Mandy Bum fought any of those women, she would have wound up in a body bag. I promise you. After what Ariane Lipski did to her, this would have been just a horrible mismatch. And it's not like Leonardo had great fights against them, but when you see Leonardo win, you see what she's good at. She's clearly a fighter as a human being. She's really, really tough, scrappy, and she's mean. When she got on top of Chelsea Hackett, she was messing her up. And late in that second round, when a lot of fighters would have had an adrenaline dump fighting at the UFC level for the first time in the Contender Series, late in that second round, after a very high-paced first round, when Leonardo got her down, she started with the ground and pound and did not stop until the referee peeled her off of her. I just think Victoria Leonardo is the better wrestler. I think she's a million times tougher and scrappier than Mandy Bum. And plus, Leonardo's striking isn't good, but like Mandy Bum, you could time her overhand right on a sundial. I mean, she does not move fast, I promise you. And Leonardo, like you said, she's fought the way better brand of competition here. So, yeah, this is probably going to be a bet for, I've been retired from betting women's MMA, but really what I should just say is I should be retired from laying juice on women's MMA, because if anything, you should be betting every women's underdog, because it's been cashing like crazy lately. And these lines are just getting more and more blown out. And I think people are remembering how bad Victoria Leonardo looked against these women that would have murdered Mandy Bum. They probably would have wound up on trial for what they did to Mandy Bum in the cage. So I got to pick Victoria Leonardo here. And I think that she's going to maybe even finish this woman, getting on top of her and pounding her head through the canvas.
Yeah, this is so bad. But I agree with Jay. This is the Badeau versus Parisian of women's MMA, and I could not have said it better. And then so I was taping this fight, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life, first of all? But what am I watching with Mandy Bum? Like, what is this? And then I look at the line, and she's a favorite. She's a favorite. Like, she's minus 164 right now on FanDuel Sportsbook. I don't have an explanation for it at all. I mean, I think it might be because Victoria Leonardo, we've seen her loss against, Manon Fiorot and, Melissa Gatto. Maybe people are down on her, and rightfully so. You should be down on Victoria Leonardo, but I think you should be more down on Mandy Bum here. So, we have Mandy Bum opened up minus 185. She's currently minus 135. Victoria Leonardo opened up plus 160. She is now plus 115. And can't say I'm not tempted to bet Leonardo here as a dog. It might be a little play, but just this line just makes no sense. And money's starting to come in on Leonardo. I think people are starting to watch, tape of Mandy Bum and seeing like she's not good. So I think it might take a dog shot, small, because This makes no sense. The fight goes to decision minus 215. The fight doesn't go plus 165. Any thoughts on the money line, first of all, and then any props to stick out, Weezy?
Well, I mean, I'm so disgusted with myself for betting on Mandy Bum that nothing would make me happier than seeing Victoria Leonardo take this girl down and punch mud holes into her stupid face. I mean, I am so mad at myself that I really want to see Victoria Leonardo destroy this girl from pillar to post, and I feel like I have to have money on it. But it's not just because I'm mad at myself for betting on her and having a horrible read in the Lipski fight. You know, I think Leonardo's tougher than this girl, and I think that she can bring something with her wrestling here to get this fight to the ground. You know, she's just fought way better brand of competition. I think she's way tougher. I think she's got the better conditioning. You know, and Mandy just didn't show anything in that UFC debut. So, I mean, why not take the plus money here? I think Victoria's better.
Yep, I think the line should be flipped. And that doesn't mean Mandy Bum can't go out here and win. I mean, Victoria Leonardo is really bad in her own right. Do we expect improvements out of a 32-year-old Mandy Bum? I don't know.
Anything would be an improvement.
I agree. I mean, you can't get any. That was probably the most dog shit performance. I can't think of a more dog shit performance than the Ariana Lipski fight.
I mean, you'd have to think. I mean, there have been obviously some bad ones. Some people do get starched early, but that was 15 minutes of just nothing from Mandy. It was rough to watch, especially as somebody who had a unit on her. That unit was the most painful unit I've ever lost because it was 100% my fault and it was a 100% bad read.
Yeah, those are the type of bets where you want to take a baseball bat and just put it through your TV, break your phone in half. Kind of how I felt when I bet Gina Mazzani at chalk as well.
Yep, I'll tell you, man, it's awful.
But let's get to a real fight, Weezy. What do you say? We get to a real fight. All right, enough of that. We have Jai Herbert going against Kyle Nelson. I cannot wait for this fight. We have Jai Herbert, 34 years old, 6'1", with a 77-inch reach, going against Kyle Nelson, 31 years old, 5'11", with a 71-inch reach. It's going to be Nelson, 3 years younger. It's going to be Jai Herbert with a 2-inch height advantage and a massive 6-inch reach advantage as well. Jai Herbert is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Francisco Trinaldo, was looking pretty good up until that third-round knockout. Trinaldo KO'd him, lost by submission against Renato Moicano, knocked out Kamaworthy in the first round, and then knocked out by Ilia Topuria in that second round, but had a very good first round, almost finishing Ilia Topuria his last time out. Kyle Nelson, we have not seen him in a very long time, but he did lose to Diego Ferreira by knockout. He lost to Matt Sales by submission. He beat Marco Polo Reyes by knockout in the first round and then lost in like the first 10 seconds of the third round against Billy Quarantillo. I think I know why they match these guys up, because they're both just going to go out there, stand and bang until one man falls. I mean, this fight's going to be so much fun. Both guys have no striking defense, and both guys have a ton of power. Jai Herbert not only is going to have a 6-inch reach advantage, but I think he's the better striker. I'm actually really impressed with the striking of Jai Herbert offensively. Defensively, definitely needs some work, and his chin is horrendous, but offensively, I really like what I see from Jai Herbert. He's long, he's rangy, and he hits with a ton of power. Kyle Nelson, this guy puts everything into his shots. This guy hits extremely hard, and I think he's going to be live to potentially have some success and maybe even knock out Herbert in the first round. The big problem for me with Nelson in this fight is the terrible cardio, and maybe he's improved that with his layoff there, but I kind of doubt it. He does fall off a cliff after that first round. If he's not able to get you out of there, he does slow down massively in that second and that third. But I think these guys are going to go to war here. Again, both guys, no striking defense. Both guys, questionable chins. I think somebody's getting knocked out, Weezy. I love the fight doesn't go in this matchup. I do lean towards Jai Herbert, but Jai Herbert, personally, he's not somebody I want to lay minus 300 on, but I will pick violence in this fight, and I will pick Jai Herbert to knock out Kyle Nelson. Could be any round, but especially as the fight goes on, I heavily favor Jai Herbert. So give me Jai Herbert for the KO, but definitely leaning violence on this one as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let's get that violence ticker up there. Kyle Nelson's 3 years younger, but it's Herbert who's taller. Herbert's got a 6-inch reach advantage. And it's southpaw versus orthodox. Well, Kyle Nelson switches stances, but I think that these guys are going to be throwing those power hands and kicks and looking to take each other out. They're very similar in experience. Nelson edges the pro experience. Andy edges the UFC experience. Both of these guys are finishers. In all 8 of their combined UFC fights, all 8 of those fights finished inside the distance, 2 wins and 6 losses. Each of these guys is 1-3 at the UFC level. So, that promises violence. Jai Herbert's got thunder in his hands, man. He's landing a knockdown on 4% of the significant strikes that he lands. So that means that he has 3 knockdowns in 4 fights, and he's landing 1.5 knockdowns per 15 minutes. And he's been knocked down 1 time per 15 minutes, and he's getting knocked down on 2.3% of the significant strikes that he absorbs. And for Nelson, it's 0.5 of 1%. Both of these guys striking defense is below 50%. Kyle Nelson throws 8.7 significant strikes a minute, but his opponents are throwing 13.04. Kyle's almost absorbing twice as many significant strikes per minute than he lands, while Herbert lands about 0.43 significant strikes per minute less than he absorbs. So both of these guys eat more than they land. Jai's not going to try to take you down. Kyle will try to take down Jai Herbert. I think that would be a great thing for a fight doesn't go to decision bet here, because that'll just get Kyle Nelson gassed out. And then once that happens, somebody's going to land a big shot, because Kyle will get desperate and he'll start throwing those big hooks. But if Jai Herbert lands that 1-2 that comes straight down the middle like a piston, you're not going to have your feet underneath you anymore, man. He hits hard. Black country banger. Can't wait to see this guy back in there at home in the United Kingdom in front of his home crowd, man. This is going to be a fun fight, but it promises violence. And I think somebody, like you said, is going to get knocked out here, and it probably ends in under 1.5 rounds.
Yep, I agree. And that's a good point about the wrestling as well. I think Kyle Nelson does have okay wrestling. His grappling is pretty good as well. It's just if he uses this in this matchup, I think it might be a bad idea, because that wrestling will get you tired, and Jai Herbert is big and he is hard to hold down. So I think if he does wrestle, it probably be a mistake. If you're Kyle Nelson, you probably just go out there and try to knock this guy out is kind of what my game plan would be for him. But I think they're going to stand and bang. One man's going to fall. I think the violence is a great look. And as soon as I get access to that line, I will be pounding it. We have the fight goes at plus 175. The fight doesn't go at minus 245. They opened up the fight, doesn't go at minus 210. Would have loved it there, but still no props out from anything other than 5 dimes here. We got Jai Herbert is a big favorite. Minus 250 opened up, currently minus 260. Kyle Nelson opened up plus 210, currently plus 220. I don't really want to lay that much chalk on Jai Herbert here in a fight like this. But I think he does win. Jai Herbert inside the distance is plus 100. That's decent. Nelson inside the distance plus 330. I think anything violence here is good. Under 1.5. I'm curious to see what the under 2.5 is, but I will. I'd be shocked if I didn't have a violence bet on this fight. I mean, these finish rates are just nuts. Jai Herbert a 91% finish rate. And then these finish losses, and Jai Herbert's been finishing all of his losses. Nelson in 3 of 4. You factor in the bad gas tank of Nelson as well. Both guys, no striking defense. I think it is one of my favorite violent spots in the entire card.
It's such a good one. I mean, both of these guys, do get controlled a lot. So you just have to kind of hope that, it doesn't wind up being a grappling match. But every second that this fight is on the feet, it's going to be, these dudes are going to be just throwing heat at each other. So I'm looking for a knockout in this fight, and I'm expecting it to happen, because Jai Herbert does not shoot for takedowns, and Kyle Nelson shot for 16, but he's only gotten 2 of them. So it's not like he's this spectacular wrestler either. So, yeah, violence in this spot is the word of the day for sure.
Sounds good. Let's keep moving on. We have 288 of you hanging out here, almost 300, which I don't know if we ever got 300 before, but appreciate all of you guys hanging out. If you guys have not already, be sure to leave a like. Let's get at least 100 likes on the show. By the time we get out of here, we would appreciate that a ton. Let us move on to the next fight. We have Muhammad Mokaev going against Charles Johnson, with Mokaev only 21 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. Charles Johnson, 31 years old, 5'10" with a 70.5-inch reach. Mokaev, of course, very young, one of the youngest, if not the youngest, fighter in the UFC at this point. He's going to be 10 years younger than Charles Johnson, and it's going to be Johnson with a 2-inch height advantage and a half inch of reach advantage. There we go. Mokaev is 4-0 and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights. He made his debut against Cody Durden, had that knee, finished him by submission. Very good debut. And Charles Johnson is making his debut here, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. We have Mokaev, who is the biggest favorite on the entire card. And I have a feeling I know what the UFC is doing here. I don't think they're bringing in Charles Johnson into London to go out there and build up Charles Johnson. I think they're trying to build up the young Mokaev, 21 years old. I think they're trying to build him up. This is a good matchup. Charles Johnson is definitely no bum. I think Charles Johnson's very well-rounded, solid striking, solid grappling. I went back and watched his fight against Brandon Royval, was very impressed with his grappling defense as well. It definitely held up. So yeah, biggest favorite on the card, Mokaev. Weezy, what do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I think that everybody's sleeping on Charles Johnson, and I think he's going to surprise some people here. Even if he loses this fight, I just think that this is going to wind up working out a lot closer than people think it will. Johnson's 10 years older than this guy, but he's also 2 inches taller, has a half-inch of reach, and he's a switch stance fighter. That's a statistically significant attribute to have, because especially when you're more experienced, it allows you to be able to fight at a stance where you can read your opponent and find out what stance puts them at a worse defensive spot and what makes them less offensively comfortable as well. So Charles has got 5 more pro fights, 100 more minutes in the pro cage, and about 4 more years as a pro, even though Muhammad Mokaev has a extensive amateur background. So, it's not like he's way more experienced or even had more fights than Johnson. But Johnson, if I'm not mistaken, also had a pretty long amateur career as well. But I might be wrong about that. Both of these guys are finishing over 70%. And we just don't have much. We can't. This is stat diggers. We can't really talk stats because Muhammad Mokaev gave us less than 1 minute of UFC stats, and Charles Johnson has given us 0. But the bottom line is that Johnson's pretty damn good everywhere. And when you watch his fight against Carlos Mota Tizil, who I also think will be here soon, Tizil is the real deal and a very good fighter, very well-rounded fighter, excellent grappler. Charles Johnson performed in an eye-opening fashion over 5 rounds against Tizil, finishing him in the 5th round. Charles is good. Like I say, he's just more experienced in this spot. I think he's just really well-rounded, while we still have to see more out of Mokaev. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to get my eyes on that Blaine O'Driscoll fight in Brave, which was, I think, the most relevant fight that Mokaev has had outside of the Durden fight thus far. So I'm looking to be able to watch that fight. But once I do, I think I'll have a better idea of what I think of Mokaev. But obviously, Mokaev being the Dagestani pedigree of wrestler, he's that archetype of fighter that drives lines to where they are right now on Muhammad. There's a reason why people are excited for this dude. He's young, he's dynamic, he's had a ton of amateur bouts, and he brings a wrestling game which allows him to, pick where the fight takes place, make things easier. And if he is schooled well and uses his fight IQ, along with that wrestling, he's going to be very, very difficult to beat. This is a tough debut for Charles Johnson, but I'm not counting him out here. And the further this line goes, I might be taking a shot on Charles Johnson here, because I think I might be able to arb out of it if he has any success in this fight.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of people already taking the shot on Charles Johnson. Looks like Mokaev opened up -500, went to -550s, already back to +4 or to -460. So looks like money is coming in on Johnson as we speak. Johnson currently +360. I'm gonna pick Mokaev to win here, but I don't know, -460. It's just wide. It's just way too wide. If anything, to improve it, I guess Mokaev by decision at +180. If anything, is where I'd look. Charles Johnson, extremely tough to finish on the feet and then extremely tough to finish on the mat. I guess I could maybe get to a Mokaev by decision at +180, but other than that, I am going to be staying away and kind of watching this one. The fight goes to decision +135. I don't hate that. Fight doesn't go to decision is -175. Any thoughts on the time props here, Weezy?
Minus 175 for any 125-pound fight is juiced, Brady. Hey, I got my prop template. Let me get that number for you guys. So let me get that here. Makhachev Johnson. So the flyweight fights are finishing 39.9% of the time, and we're paying 63.64% at minus 175 for the fight doesn't go. That means when we compare that 39.9% finish rate of the division to the implied probability of the line, we're overpaying by almost 24%. And when we get plus 135, Brady, on the fight goes to decision, we're seeing that is a 42% implied probability. However, 60% of 125-pound fights that are 3 rounds since 2013 do go to decision. So we're getting a 17.5% break on the fight goes to decision there. So the analytics do love that. The fight goes bet. You're overpaying for the fight doesn't go, and I think it's because people think that Makhachev's just going to completely destroy this guy. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I'm picking Makhachev too, but I think it's going to be close.
Yep. Yeah, plus 130 for that fight goes. I mean, Johnson never been finished, never been knocked out, never been subbed, and he's fought some pretty good guys. So, yeah, I don't think Makhachev runs right through him either. I know some people do. Sean V in the chat thinks so, but we'll have to see. But it should be a fun fight. Definitely looking forward to it. And I'm also looking forward to this next fight, Weezy. We have Makwan, Amirkhani going against Jonathan Pearce. We have Amirkhani, 33 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach. Jonathan Pearce, 30 years old, 6 foot with a 71-inch reach. Pearce is going to be 3 years younger. Pearce is going to have a 2-inch height advantage, and it's going to be Makwan with a 1-inch reach advantage here. Makwan is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a submission win against Danny Henry, a decision loss to Edson Barbosa, a decision loss to Camilla Kirk, a knockout loss against Lerone Murphy, and then a submission win against Mike Grundy in the first minute of his last fight. Jonathan Pearce is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, had a knockout win against Jacob Rosales on the Contender Series, had a knockout loss to Joe Lozon in the first round, had a knockout win against Kai Kamaka, a submission win against Omar Morales, and then a decision win. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Pearce, as are you, Weezy. I just love this guy's style. He's never in a boring fight. Every single fight is exciting, and he brings a pace that most guys cannot keep up with, especially a guy like Makwan Amirkhani, who does have some gas tank issues, and he really uses his pace and his cardio as a weapon. Jonathan Pearce is a very exciting fighter and a very good fighter as well. There are some things I don't like about Jonathan Pearce, though, that I think could give him trouble in the future. Maybe not so much in this fight, but his striking defense is not great. He does rely on his chin a lot. He's very sloppy on the feet, willing to take shots. That could be a problem going forward. I don't think it's a problem in this fight. And I also notice he's very sloppy on the mat as well. He's making a ton of mistakes. He's been put in a bunch of bad spots. I went through and watched all 5 of his last fights, and he was put in a really bad spot in the first round against Rosales, in the first round against Joe Lozon, in the first round against Kai Kamaka, and then in the first, second, and third round against Christian Rodriguez. And he was able to fight out of those positions on the mat, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to fight out of those positions against Makwan Amirkhani. If this fight gets out of the first round, it's Jonathan Pearce all day, but I think he's going to have to definitely battle some adversity here. I think he's going to be put in some really bad spots, and that's what makes this fight so exciting. So this is another fight where I'm definitely leaning violence. I think Makwan is going to be super live early in that first round for a submission, for a finish, and I think Jonathan Pearce is going to be super live to break Makwan in that second and third round. So fight doesn't go. I'm looking at Makwan by sub, Makwan round 1. I'm looking at Jonathan Pearce round 2 and round 3. I think there's a lot of ways to play this fight, and should be a very fun fight, Weezy.
Yeah, I can't wait for this one, obviously. I'm a huge Jonathan Pearce fan. I love anybody that uses pace as a weapon, wrestling as the delivery mechanism for that pace. When you're just wrestling, you can absolutely break somebody. And we've seen Pearce break Jacob Rosales, for instance, with striking. He just drowned him with volume. This guy does more, with every second in the cage. Jonathan Pearce is doing something. He's never taking a second off. While Makwan Amirkhani is the absolute opposite of that. He's a guy that has 1 round of gas. He is a wrestler, but he can't wrestle. He is not successful with his wrestling usually after the 6 or 7 minute mark in a fight. But what Makwan Amirkhani has that's excellent is a front choke series. I mean, this guy is somebody you do not want to leave your head on the outside against when you're shooting in on a takedown. His Darce and Bravo and Anaconda chokes are top notch. And if you get caught slipping against him, you will wind up sleeping, just like Mike Grundy did, just like Danny Henry did. You know, that's what happens to guys who don't know how to fight the right game plan against Amirkhani. So it's a very interesting stylistic fight, because we know that Jonathan Pearce puts himself in bad situations over and over and over again. But Jonathan, not to make excuses for him, because he's a fighter that I like, but that's his style. His style is he's going to trust his chin, he's going to trust his conditioning, and he's going to use his wrestling and his striking to just draw a brawl out of you, get you into a high-paced fight, and then he will be there in the second and the third going at full pace, while you will be going at half pace in the second and at 1/10 pace in the third. And then, you know, Jonathan Pearce is the type of fighter who will make you look for the door. And believe me, he's going to make Makwan Amirkhani find it if this fight goes past the 6-minute mark. So the question is, can Makwan lock up, a Bravo in the first 6 minutes? And the answer is absolutely yes. Because Jonathan's so sloppy, because he trusts his chin so much, he's willing to put himself into bad spots. Christian Rodriguez had him in guillotine that I thought the fight was over. So, this is a very interesting fight. Fight doesn't go to decision is definitely something I'm going to be looking at here, because I have the utmost faith in Jonathan Pearce that if this fight goes past like the 6 or 7 minute mark, that he's going to finish Makwan Amirkhani. There's no doubt in my mind, just because of the pace that he puts on and the fact that your conditioning doesn't get better at the age of 33. I mean, when we get Makwan Amirkhani fight week, we get the best Tapology pick that there is. Yeah. And that Tapology pick isn't something that he just, had a photographer set up and be like, hey, I want people to think that I'm cool and hang around with women. That's what Makwan does. He spends more time in the club partying with beautiful women like that, and I can't blame him, okay? I mean, he's a young man. He's Mr. Finland. Of course he's going to go to the clubs and crush some ass, as often as he wants to, because he's Mr. Finland. He can do that. But that does not help with your conditioning, man, when you're out there partying at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And your conditioning needs to be 100% on point if you're going to fight Jonathan Pearce. The bet is violence, my man. I'm going to be leaning Pearce here, but, there have been people talking about this line being too wide, and I tend to agree with them. I don't really think you can lay -205, -210 on Pearce's money line here, because he puts himself in bad spots, because we've seen him deep in guillotines before, because he blocks punches with his face. But he's trying to draw you into that brawl. I think he's going to get that brawl that he wants from Amirkhani, and as a result of that, I think we're going to see this fight finish inside the distance one way or another. But if you're on that Jonathan Pearce side, I might want to try to live bet this dude.
Absolutely.
I think that's the best way to go, because Makwan is absolutely going to be most dangerous in the first round. And if Makwan tries to pull some shit and say, you know what, I'm gonna take the first round off and save my gas tank so this guy doesn't drown me in the second or the third, then Pearce is just going to drown him in the first. Because that's just, this guy's switch gets switched on the second he gets up out of that locker room and walks towards the cage, and it doesn't get switched off until the ref pulls him off of you. So this thing is not going the full 15.
Yeah, I don't think so either. That fight doesn't go, I think, is the best way to play it. It covers the Makwan first round. It covers the Jonathan Pearce second and third. Yeah. And it opened up -145, which I couldn't believe. -145 fight doesn't go. I would have loved that. Yeah. And it's currently -175. And even at -175, I'd still like it. You could also maybe do the under 2.5, and then also the Jonathan Pearce round 3. I'd be shocked if Makwan really finished this fight outside of round 1. So, the line is pretty wide here. I do think Jonathan Pearce should be the favorite because he does have more paths to victory, whereas Makwan, it's probably sub 1 or bust. And if we're talking Tapology pictures, then I think Makwan would be minus 400 here, but we're talking fights. And I do think Jonathan Pearce, slight favorite, makes sense. But yeah, I'm going to be looking at violence here. Looks like Bet Online, nothing like that, still out. But yeah, if I had access to that minus 175, I would definitely be playing it. And if I had access to that minus 145 yesterday, I would have smashed that probably for a couple of units as well.
Yeah, I can't wait for this fight. What a great first half of the card. Other than the bum Leonardo fight, this is fantastic, dude.
Absolutely, this fight is so good. Let us keep moving on, guys. We have, there we go. We have Marc Diakiese going against Damir Hadžović. We have Marc Diakiese, 29 years old, 5'10" with a 73-inch reach. Hadžović, 35 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. Marc Diakiese, 6 years younger. Marc Diakiese with a 1-inch height advantage, a 3-inch reach advantage as well. Marc Diakiese is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a decision win against Joe Duffy, a decision win against Lando Venata, a decision loss against Rafael Fiziev, a submission loss against Rafael Alves, and then a decision win against Borshev in his last fight out. Damir Hadžović is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a decision win against Nick Heim, a knockout win against Marco Polo Reyes, a decision loss against Christos Giagos, a submission loss against Renato Moicano, and then a decision win against Yancy Medeiros. Yeah, I feel like this is such a good spot for Marc Diakiese here. You take a look, for example, at his last fight against Borshev. Like, if you're Marc Diakiese, you come in here and you do the exact same thing, and he's going to have the same amount of success, or if not more success in this fight against Damir Hadžović, who has some of the worst takedown defense I've ever seen. Currently on paper, it is 37%. This guy literally cannot stop a takedown. And if you're Marc Diakiese, although I think Diakiese is the better striker, why not do that same game plan, take this guy down and control him for 3 rounds? Marc Diakiese showed that he could do that in his last fight. He showed he had the gas tank to do that. And another thing is Damir Hadžović has no gas tank. He slows down as the fight goes on as well. So Diakiese is a big favorite here, and I totally get it, especially if he does come in here with the same game plan, getting this fight down to the mat, and just exploiting that awful takedown defense of Hadžović. So I like Diakiese here. I like him a ton. I think he's better everywhere, but the path to victory is there. Just take this guy down. It's going to be a walk in the park for Diakiese, in my opinion. So Weezy, should be a fun fight. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, and I mean, I think Diakiese is the better striker too. But he's still only 29. And the thing about Marc is that really impresses me is that when he comes into the UFC, right, he's this, I'm going to separate you from your consciousness striker. You watch those 2 or 3 fights in Cage Warriors before he comes into the UFC, he's sleeping dudes and they're not getting up for like a long time. So the Bone Crusher comes into the UFC, and then he starts like showing, after he starts training at ATT, that he can wrestle too, and that he can not just rely on his striking and his power, but he's got a well-rounded mixed martial arts game. Marc Diakiese has attempted 63 takedowns in 11 fights. And this is a guy, like I said, that came in with a pure striker's pedigree here. He's out-controlling his opponents 26% to 16%. And he's out-striking his opponents 2.84 to 2.56. Throws about 1.6 more significant strike attempts per minute. Landing a knockdown in about 0.5% of the significant strikes that he lands. And he's only been knocked down once in 11 fights. So, it's all good on the striking numbers for Diakiese. Would like to see him landing more strikes, but he's spending 41% of his 127 minutes in the UFC cage in control time positions for or against. So, he's not exactly what I would call low volume as a result of that. Now, Hadžović lands 3.92 and absorbs 3.7. 62.67% striking defense. Hadžović has only been knocked down once in 8 fights, and he's got 2 knockdowns. So both of these guys have landed 2 knockdowns and only absorbed 1 at the UFC level. But it's Hadžović who's more accurate, Hadžović who's more defensively responsible. But Hadžović throws about 1.8 less significant strike attempts per minute. But like you mentioned, Brady, Diakiese spends 41% of his fights, 42 in control time positions for or against. But he's winning about 60 to 65% of those control time positions, while Hadžović is spending about 45% of his fights in control time positions for or against. But he's winning about 27% of those control time positions. So anytime Marc doesn't like how it's going on the feet, and I think he probably will be the minute winner on the feet. I mean, this guy stood with Rafael Fiziev for 15 minutes. You know, I mean, I think that he can handle Hadžović on the feet. So anytime Marc doesn't like how it's going, he can just try to take Damir down and win minutes down there. The strength of schedule is close. The win's actually a little bit better for Hadžović. The loss is better for Diakiese, and overall it's close. But I just think that Diakiese, being the younger fighter here, 29 years old in comparison to 35 for Hadžović, just his experience, certainly on a little bit better of a streak, not right now having that great win against Borshev there, and then losing to Rafael Alves and Fiziev before that, but then beating Venata and Duffy. You know, those are better wins than Yancy Medeiros, Polo Reyes, Nick Hein. You know, so I think that Dia-kiese should pretty easily cruise to a win in this fight, simply because even though I think he's the better striker, it should be easy for him to win minutes on the ground as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alan Patrick took him down 9 times. Held took him down 4 times. Giagos took him down 6 times. Even Medeiros took him down twice. I mean, the takedown defense is just a huge concern, and it's something that he's never patched up, and he's currently 35 years old, so I don't really see him going out there and making an improvement from his last fight till now. So I think it's a great spot for Marc Diakiese, and like most fighters on this card, he is a big favorite. He opened up -300, currently -310. Hadžović opened up +250, is currently +260. They only have 2 props out, both for Diakiese. Diakiese inside the distance +165. Diakiese by decision is +145. Anything sticking out?
You know, no, not really, to be honest with you. We could take a quick look at the prop template to see if anything it likes. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. What was the fight doesn't go? I didn't have this one.
They don't have it out.
Oh, okay. My bad. Yeah. I think Dia-kiese probably wins this one by decision. Hadžović is pretty tough, but I'm going to have to take a longer look at it.
Yep, me too. I mean, maybe Dia-kiese is a parlay piece, but that's about it. All right, we can move on to the next fight. I believe we're getting on to the main card here, and this is going to open up the main card, which I see why they're opening it up, man. This fight is going to be a banger. Yeah. We have Paul Craig going against Volkan Oezdemir. We have Paul Craig, who is 34 years old, 6'3", with a 76-inch reach, going against Volkan Oezdemir, 32 years old, 6'2", with a 75-inch reach. Oezdemir is going to be 2 years younger, and it's going to be Paul Craig with both a 1-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach advantage as well. Paul Craig is 4-0 and a draw in his last 5 fights, a draw against Shogun, a submission win against Antagulov, a knockout win against Shogun, a knockout win against Jamal Hill, and then a submission win against Nikita Krylov. As far as Volkan Oezdemir, 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a decision loss to Dominic Reyes, super close fight there, could win either way, a knockout win against Ilir Latifi, a decision win against Alexander Rakic, a knockout loss against Yuri Prohashka, and then a decision loss to Magomed Ankalaev. So this is going to be a really big step up in competition for Paul Craig, going from guys like Shogun, Antagulov, guys like Vinces Moreira, guys like that. Nikita Krylov, a good step up, but this is going to be an even bigger step up against a guy like Volkan Oezdemir here. And, Paul Craig, he has to be one of my favorite fighters. I love this guy. I always bet violence in his fights, and you can see why. This guy has a 100% finish rate in his wins and a 100% finish rate in his losses. He's only been to decision once in 21 professional fights, and that fight was against Shogun, which was a draw, which had so many opportunities to finish. But I think it's a really tough matchup for Paul Craig here. Volkan Oezdemir, unlike a Krylov, unlike a Jamal Hill, unlike an Antagulov, this is a guy that just has no reason to come in here and grapple at all. I feel like if Oezdemir fights smart, and you know what Paul Craig's going to do, he's going to try to take down Oezdemir. He's going to try to pull guard. If you're Volkan Oezdemir, just don't go in his guard. Keep this on the feet. And I think Oezdemir can knock out Paul Craig here. But Paul Craig is a live dog in every single fight. He's had 14 fights or 13 fights in the UFC, and he's been the dog in 11 out of 13 fights. He's always the underdog, and you can see why with this style. I mean, he's not a minute winner on the feet. It's going to be Oezdemir all day. It's not even close. If it does hit the mat, it's going to be Paul Craig, but I think he's going to have a tough time to get there. Oezdemir has elite takedown defense at 80%, which is really impressive considering the guys he's been fighting. I think it's a really tough matchup for Paul Craig. Does that mean he can't win? No. But I feel like Oezdemir has all the tools to go out here and knock out Paul Craig. We saw Alonzo Menifield go out there and knock out Paul Craig. We saw, I think it was Pedro that went out there and knocked out Paul Craig as well. And then he has one more knockout loss, I think. Alonzo Menifield, Roundtree knocked him out as well. So we saw Menifield, Roundtree, Tyson Pedro, and then he also got submitted by Jimmy Crute. I feel like if Oezdemir fights smart, keeps on the feet, I feel like he knocks out Paul Craig. I think the strike is just night and day here. So give me Oezdemir to win by first round knockout. But if Oezdemir makes a mistake and wants to test his ground game, Paul Craig could be live in that aspect. But I think Oezdemir does win here more often than not. But you can't ever count out a dog like Paul Craig. Weezy, how do you feel about this banger?
Oh, I can't wait, man. I can't wait for this fight. But Oezdemir is 2 years younger. He's still only 32 years old, Oezdemir. But Craig, 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach advantage. Oezdemir, 2 more fights, about 25 more minutes in the pro cage, 3 more years as a pro. But Craig has 3 more UFC level fights, but they're about the same for time in the UFC cage. Both of their fight time less than 10 minutes in the UFC. Love the nickname No Time Oezdemir, when he goes, I got no time, when he finishes dudes quickly. Really good finisher. Obviously, both of these guys, 77% for Oezdemir, you're covered, 100% for and against, for Paul Craig. And Ozdemir's finished 3 of his 5 UFC wins inside the distance. And he's been finished in 3 of his 5 UFC losses. So, both of these guys, good finishers, but Paul Craig, 20 of 21 fights finishing inside the distance is just bonkers. So obviously Oezdemir is going to be the better striker here. You don't really see it in the numbers, but Oezdemir lands about a half more significant strike per minute than he absorbs. He's also throwing a little over 1 more significant strike attempt per minute, while Craig lands about the same is what he absorbs, and he throws the same amount of significant strike volume as his opponents do. The knockdowns per total significant strikes landed edges Oezdemir, and so does the knockdowns per 15 minutes. And both of these guys have been knocked down about 0.3 times per 15 minutes, but you can tell with Craig, it's a much higher percentage of strikes that he's absorbing that are knocking him down in comparison to Oezdemir. So, this appears to be a striker versus grappler matchup. But when we're looking at the stats, Brady, we always have to be very, very careful about grapplers like Paul Craig, right? Because it's not just, hey, can Paul Craig get a takedown, right? It was kind of like with Jessica Penne last week, with Mackenzie Dern, with Damian Maia. They don't need a takedown. They might jump guard on you, and you will be just in just as much trouble trying to get out of their guard than you would be if they were on top of you. Paul Craig will pull guard. Paul Craig will try to take your back standing. He'll just try crazy shit in order to get that to the grappling exchanges. So we can't just say, oh, Paul Craig's only getting takedowns at a 27% rate, and Oezdemir, 80% takedown defense. He's stuffed 24 of 30 takedowns. He's getting controlled less than 10% of his UFC career, despite the fact that his opponents are attempting 3 takedowns against him per fight. All those numbers look really good for Ozdemir's grappling defense, but Paul Craig is a very unique challenge. And look, Craig has been a master of getting fights to where he wants them. Over 62.5% of his fights are taking place in control time positions for or against. That's 5 out of every 8 seconds, Brady. So Volkan's spending 2 out of every 10 seconds in control time positions for or against. Paul Craig is about 6, about 5 out of 8, about 62%. So he's 3 times more likely to be in control time positions than Volkan is. When we look at the strength of schedule, it's Volkan. Definitely overall, when we look at the wins, they lean Volkan, and the losses also are much more for Volkan here. So I love Volkan's striking. I love the strength of schedule. I like the fact that he's younger, and he appears to be more well-rounded because he is a good grappler. You don't see this guy going out there and getting submitted all the time. He's been submitted twice in 23 fights, though. So it's obviously a possibility. But Paul Craig blocks punches with his face, and Oezdemir hits like a truck. And Craig is a very wily grappler, and he's maybe even more dangerous from his back than he is from on top. So he might not even need a takedown. It's another fight where it really feels like violence is the word of the day, Brady.
Yeah, absolutely. And Thomas, shout to Thomas, another guy that loves violence, said it in the chat on Bovada Sportsbook as we speak. For some reason, they have the under 2.5 rounds at -185, which just makes no sense at all. Looks like the fight doesn't go to decision, -270 right now. The fight goes to decision is +190. I think that can even be wider. I think at the very least, it should finish 8 out of 10 times. You have a kill or be killed fighter. Like Paul Craig's the definition of a kill or be killed fighter. Either he's going to go out there, he's going to get the sub, or he gets knocked out on the feet here. So I think violence is definitely the answer. That under 2.5 -185 is nuts to me. The fight doesn't go. Could be a parlay piece as well. And then I like Oezdemir quite a bit, but I don't want to completely write off Paul Craig. A lot of people are going to be on him, but I think it's a horrible matchup for Paul Craig here. But you never know. Maybe Oezdemir decides, hey, I'm gonna test my ground game like Jamal Hill did, like some other guy Krylov did. Let me test my ground game against Paul Craig. Let me, land some ground and pound here and there. If he does that, Paul Craig's going to be live. But in terms of like this line, I feel like it could even be wider here. And if you do like Paul Craig, just take the sub prop. But unfortunately, you're not going to get no plus 500, 600, 700 like we have been getting. It's plus 230. So, I mean, they're all over that. And I think even that's going to come down. Like that's his win condition. It's going to be a submission. And I think his win condition is going to be a drastic mistake from Volkan Oezdemir. So I like Volkan. I like Volkan by knockout. I like Volkan by knockout in the very first round. But most importantly, I love me some violence in this fight. And I probably should bring up the violence ticker.
Do it. Why not? Why don't you bring up that violence sticker while I read off these stats?
Let's do it.
18 of 23 combined UFC fights have finished inside the distance between Oezdemir and Craig. That is 78.3%. That is 21% better than the divisional finish rate and 3.9% better than the implied probability of the line, which is already juiced to the tits at -290. So even at -290, there's value. 7 of their 9 combined losses inside the distance at the UFC level. 11 of 13 wins. So 85% of their wins, 78% of their losses. It is a very impressive 78% combined finish rate for these two guys. So even at -290, that is bettable. And that is something that gets the Uncle Weezy stamp of approval as a potential parlay piece this week.
I like it. Yeah, definitely some violence in this fight. Every Paul Craig fight, you can expect some violence. The guy doesn't go in there wanting to go to decision. So I say we keep moving on here. 338 people hanging in here. That's how you know that, for one, it's a great card, and I think it's that has to be a record. I don't recall ever getting 300 people. So thank you all so much for hanging out. If you guys have not already, leave a like and then also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Just went up to 344. So appreciate you guys a ton. Let us move on to the next fight. We have Molly McCann going against Hannah Goldy. We have Molly McCann, 32 years old, 5'4" with a 62-inch reach. Hannah Goldy, 30 years old, 5'4" with a 61-inch reach. Goldy, 2 years younger. And then it's going to be Molly McCann with a 1-inch reach advantage. And this is another fight where I feel like, are they bringing in Hannah Goldy to London to build her up, to get her a win? No, they are bringing in Hannah Goldy into London to get Molly McCann a win here. And I think she does get the job done. Molly McCann, 3-2 in her last 5 fights, a decision win against Diana Belbita, a decision loss against Tala Santos, a decision loss against Laura Procopio, a decision win against Jin Young Kim, and then a knockout win against Luana Carolina. Hannah Goldy, 3-2 in her last 5 fights. She did make her debut against Hannah Granger, lost the decision to Diana Belbita, and then submitted Emily Quitmeyer. Tailor-made matchup here for Molly McCann. That doesn't mean she should be -400, which is nuts. Molly McCann should not be a -400 favorite against anybody, but she's gonna win this fight. She's gonna have the crowd behind her. Everything she throws and lands, you're going to get a huge reaction. It's gonna sway the judges. If this fight goes to decision, which I strongly lean it to, there is no way that she is going to lose that decision. Also, stylistically, I feel like the striking will be somewhat competitive. I do slightly favor Molly McCann. I think she'll be landing the harder shots, but I think a sneaky path to victory for McCann is going to be that wrestling. Now, McCann has attempted 36 takedowns in 8 fights. And then she's getting a lot of them stuffed, but she's getting them stuffed against Jin Young Kim, who has very good takedown defense, Tyler Santos, who has very good takedown defense. I don't think Hannah Goldy has good takedown defense. I think Molly McCann can mix in the wrestling here, win minutes on the mat, and then on the feet. Like I said, she's going to have the crowd behind her. She's going to go nuts, and she's probably going to get this decision win. But do I want to lay minus 400 on a Molly McCann fight? No, I do not. But it's hard to pick against her in this fight. So give me Molly McCann by decision. But I'm not touching this one from a betting perspective. I'll sit back and watch it. It's going to be so much fun. Luana Carolina was a fun fight. Jin Young Kim was a fun fight. I expect this one to be kind of the same here, Weezy. So what do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I can't wait for this one either because, I mean, Molly McCann fighting in London is I mean, if you can't get up for that, stop watching MMA because she gets so fired up. She is so fun to watch. The crowd absolutely loves her. Dude, that fight against Luana Carolina, she came out like Luana owed her money. Yeah. She whooped her ass. It was like a 10-inch reach disadvantage that she was at, and she marched her down. She had absolutely no respect for her opponent whatsoever, stayed in her face. Like it was like Luana had talked shit about her family, stolen from her, keyed her car, stole her girlfriend or boyfriend. I mean, that was an ass shaving. I was like so angry that I didn't pick Molly McCann as the ass shaving of the week because it would have been like the best ass shaving of the week pick ever because that was what Molly did to her. And that is how hype drives a line, and that is how recency bias drives a line. I mean, this line is ridiculous, but that's what you have to pay if you want to bet on England's favorite daughter, Meatball Molly McCann, to go out there and just completely dismantle Hannah Goldy. And she can get takedowns too, can Molly. This is going to be really rough for Hannah. The whole crowd is going to be against her. She's going to be fighting one of England's just like favorite people. And nobody gets fired up for Molly McCann fights like the Brits do. It's just amazing. I can't wait for this. I can't wait to see Molly McCann on another main card. I can't wait to see her fight like this girl owes her money again. And I might have to like just parlay her untracked just so I can root for her on Saturday. Because if she wins this fight, it's just, I mean, it's going to be a great post-fight interview. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to just, the crowd is going to be going crazy. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to this fight. It's just not bettable. I don't really see a path for Goldy. She's going to have so much to overcome. Her bad takedown defense, the fact that Molly McCann might be the only 125-pounder who actually has a reach on, or I mean, Goldy basically has the worst reach in the whole division. Molly McCann shouldn't have a reach advantage over anybody in the division, but she actually has a reach advantage here. So, like Molly, to walk this girl down, land more strikes, throw more volume, and win this fight, and do it in front of the home crowd. And even if she fights like shit, I think that, you know, she'll still get the decision just like Shane Burgos did in Long Island. You know, I mean, if they steal this fight from Molly McCann, the judges are not getting out alive. And I'm praying that happens because that means Saul D'Amato might get actually ripped to shreds by a foaming at the mouth London crowd. And if there could be a better moment for mixed martial arts in this decade, I don't know what would that be other than Sal D'Amato just being like screaming bloody murder while the London crowd envelops him for having a 30-27 for Goldy, even though McCann shaved her ass. Wouldn't that be great, Brady?
It'd be crazy. It'd be nuts. But, man, I mean, yeah, Goldy has a lot going against her. The crowd going against her. The judges probably going against her. The OnlyFans fade going against her. Hannah Goldy, as far as I'm concerned, has an OnlyFans. Just a lot going against Hannah Goldy here. But this is probably the most ridiculous line on the card. Molly McCann opened up minus 200. She's currently minus 400. Goldy opened up plus 170. She's currently plus 300. I'm not touching this fight. The picks, Molly, clearly. Molly by decision. Is she going to look minus 400? I'd be shocked if she did. But maybe. I mean, I don't know. But McCann minus 400 is not going to touch that. Not even a parlay piece for me. The fight goes to decision. Looks like minus 210 on 5 dimes, minus 235 on FanDuel, over 2.5, minus 255. Yeah, I'm just going to sit back and watch this one. No action for me on Meatball at minus 430 on Draft or FanDuel. Wow.
That's just bonkers, dude. As glowingly as I just spoke about Molly McCann, I am not encouraging anybody to bet that line. Maybe do it with a couple of bucks on fight day just to root for, throw in a parlay with something else. But no, man, this is way, way too wide. Hannah Goldy's a good fighter. And actually, if you look at the numbers, she throws more volume than her opponents. She lands more significant strikes than her opponents. And she's usually at a much bigger reach disadvantage here. So, Hannah could walk forward. Hannah could throw bombs. She can make this a lot closer than what the line is saying. And there's just no reason to lay minus 400 on any mixed martial arts women's favorite. Not in this day and age, Brady. We can't do it.
We definitely cannot do it. So we can move on to the next fight. We have Nikita Krylov going against Alexander Gustafsson. We have Krylov, who is 30 years old, 6'3" with a 77-inch reach. Gustafsson, 35 years old, 6'5" with a 79-inch reach. Krylov, 5 years younger, and it's going to be Gustafsson with a 2-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage as well. Krylov is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a submission win against Ovince St. Preux, a decision loss to Glover Teixeira, a decision win against Johnny Walker, a decision loss against Magomed Ankalaev, and a submission loss against Paul Craig. As far as Alexander Gustafsson, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a decision win against Jan Blachowicz, a knockout win against Glover Teixeira, a knockout loss against John Jones, a submission loss against Anthony Smith, and a submission loss against Fabricio Werdum at heavyweight his last time out. And this is honestly probably the toughest fight on the card to call for me. And this is probably like my 1-800-GAMBLER fight of the card because there's just so many question marks and red flags on the Alexander Gustafsson side. So the last time he's fought was 1 year and 11 months ago. It's almost 2 years at this point where we last saw Gustafsson. It was at heavyweight. It was against Werdum, a 50-year-old Werdum we haven't seen since. Werdum was able to take him down and submit him. Terrible look. Prior to that, 3 years and 1 month ago against Anthony Smith, was looking good up until Anthony Smith got him down and was able to submit him with not much resistance there. That was a bad look. And then prior to that, 3 years, 6 months ago, we did lose to John Jones. So their first fight was really, really competitive. This fight wasn't. John Jones kind of ran through him there. And the last win that Alexander Gustafsson has was 5 years and 1 month ago against Glover Teixeira. And, this guy's good, especially in his prime. Like in his prime, this guy was very good. And if we knew for a fact that he was in his prime still, which he's not, it would be Gustafsson all day in this fight. It's just, we have not seen him in 2 years. That's terrifying. He has not won a fight in 5 years. That's terrifying. I just don't know what Alexander Gustafsson we're going to get. So I feel like if we got the best version of Alexander Gustafsson, I'd be picking him all day. I just don't know if that best version really exists here. So that makes this fight really tricky to call. Weezy, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to echo everything that you just said. Alexander Gustafsson being 35 years old and not having fought in 2 years, the last fight that he did have took place at heavyweight. So even 2 years ago, the fact that Alex didn't want to cut down to 205, that's a huge red flag. And that happened in 2020. Now we haven't seen him in 2 years, but we have to admit, 35 years old for Gustafsson is not old for light heavyweight. Light heavyweight is a low skill division, and you can go a lot further. Hell, the champ was 41, 42, Glover Teixeira. So, and he was winning 4.5 rounds of that fight before he got caught at the end of it. So Gustafsson's last 2 wins are against Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira, 2 out of the last 3 champions in the light heavyweight division. The loss after that came to the greatest of all time, 21-0, John Jones at the UFC level. And then, and then he loses to Anthony Smith. by submission, and he loses to Fabricio Verdum at heavyweight. And then with Krylov, we know what we're getting with Krylov. We're getting a guy who's 8-7 in the UFC. He kind of trades wins and losses. He's finishing 7 of his 8 wins, and he's been finished in 5 of his 7 losses. So he's a violent fighter. He's only had 2 fights go to decision that were losses, and only 1 that was a win. So he's going to the decision only 20% of the time at the UFC level. If we look at the numbers here, Krylov's numbers just much better on the aggregate, as he lands 4.35 but only absorbs 2.44 significant strike attempts per minute. He throws a ton more volume in relation to his opponents. Gustafsson throws a lot more volume than his opponents too, but he lands about 0.6 more significant strikes per minute. Krylov a lot more accurate. Gustafsson landing a lot more knockdowns. 17 UFC fights for Gustafsson, and I'm showing 9 knockdowns in those 17 fights, while for Krylov, it's 3 knockdowns in 15 fights. So actually Gustafsson, a lot more dangerous with the power on the feet, landing 0.73 knockdowns per 15 minutes and only absorbing 0.08. So definitely not chinny, better striking defense than Krylov. The 44% striking defense for Krylov is definitely alarming. Now, neither one of these guys commits to the grappling a whole ton. Gustafsson, less than 3 takedown attempts per fight. Krylov, just under 2 takedown attempts per fight. Gustafsson outcontrols his opponents at a 2-to-1 ratio on the ground, while Krylov's fights are close in control time. But Krylov's actually pretty efficient, as he controls his opponents 37% of the time, and he gets controlled 32% of the time. But what that means is about 70% of Nikita Krylov's fights are taking place in control time positions, for or against. So it's probably going to come down to who the better grappler is here. And with Krylov, we've got 55% takedown defense. And with Gustafsson, we've got 84% takedown defense. With Krylov, we got a guy who's getting controlled 32% of the time. With Gustafsson, we got a guy who's getting controlled less than 10% of his UFC career of 185 minutes and 17 fights, Brady. So if we get the old Gus, and Gus is only 35, right? So if he were to come in here and look good, it wouldn't be this huge fucking shock. He's had 2 years off. A lot of those injuries that he's probably had nagging him for a while, hopefully have healed up. He can come in here and he can look good. And Krylov's a guy who leaves a lot of holes. Look, he put himself into Paul Craig's guard, Brady.
Yeah.
You don't want to lay juice on guys like that, on guys that are making decisions like that, especially against an old pro like Gus, whose last 5 fights are against Jan Blachowicz, former champion, Glover Teixeira, former champion, John Jones, greatest of all time, Anthony Smith, and Fabricio Verdum, former heavyweight champion, one of the OGs from the sport. So, Krylov's got some good names on his resume too. St. Preux, Teixeira, Johnny Walker, Ankalaev, Craig. But he's lost 3 of those 5 fights. And the guys that he beat are the guys you would expect him to beat, Walker and St. Preux. Yeah, I think that I wouldn't want to be laying juice on Nikita Krylov here, man.
Absolutely. I can't touch this fight at all. People are saying in the chat, you maybe wait for the weigh-in, see how Gus looks. Yeah,
that sounds good to me, Brady.
I don't know. If I knew for a fact that we'd be getting like the best version of Gus, it'd be probably a max bet here at plus 155. I don't know. We haven't seen him in so long, so it's just tough. And he hasn't won a fight in so long as well. But the Krylov opened up minus 185. He's currently minus 180. Gustafsson opened up plus 160. He's currently plus 155. And I'm with you. I would not feel comfortable on laying any chalk on Krylov in this fight. The fight goes to decision. It's weird. On FanDuel, it's plus 205. On 5 Dimes, it's plus 130. The fight doesn't go on FanDuel is minus 280. And on 5 Dimes, it's minus 170. And it opened up like minus 150. And so, yeah, this is a fight like borderline 100 gambler. I want nothing to do with it. A fight I'm probably just going to sit back and watch and see. which version of Gus really shows up here.
Yeah, and it's going to be a really fun fight, but we've got a massive chunk of missing information. And what's Alexander Gustafsson's motivation at this point in his career? Is he just finishing out his contract, or is he looking to make a run at 205? Because you could make a run in this division. You just got to put together a couple 3 wins, and Gus could get right back there, man. The champions, the last 2 champions were pushing 40. I mean, and Teixeira was over 40. So, yeah, we'll find out. But there's a bunch of missing information, so I don't really want my money anywhere near it.
Yeah, me either. But yeah, I can't wait for this next fight, Weezy. This is probably the people's main event, and there's so many great fights on this card, but this is probably the fight that I'm most excited about. We have 2 very exciting fighters. We have Paddy Pimblett going against Jordan Leavitt. We have Pimblett, who is 27 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach. Jordan Leavitt, 27 years old, 5'9", with a 71-inch reach. It's going to be Paddy Pimblett with a 1-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage as well. Paddy Pimblett is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Luigi Vandermini, won that fight by first-round knockout, and then he submitted Kazula Vargas in the first round in his last fight as well. Jordan Leavitt, he did make his debut against Matt Wyman, won by knockout. After that, lost a decision to Claudio Poyas, won by submission against Matt Sales, and then won by decision against Trey Ogden. Very close fight. Could have went either way there. But, yeah, really looking forward to this fight. I went and watched a ton of tape on Paddy Pimblett, watched some of his earlier film, watched a lot of his losses, and you can compare, earlier in his career, like a couple of years ago, compare it to now. Like, he's made so many changes in his game, especially physically. He looks like a completely different fighter. His striking has improved leaps and bounds. It just looks more physically strong in there, and just much more powerful in terms of the striking as well. So I really like the striking improvements of Paddy Pimblett, and he's only 27 years old. Jordan Leavitt, kind of a one-dimensional grappler, if you will. He did have some success, I guess you could say, in his last fight with the striking. He landed a ton of leg kicks, an unusual amount of leg kicks in his last fight, was ultimately able to get the win. But Jordan Leavitt absolutely wants to get the fight down to the mat. So, yeah, cannot wait for this fight. We have Paddy Pimblett, very good grappler, black belt in BJJ. We have Jordan Leavitt, very good grappler. That's his bread and butter. Paddy Pimblett's going to be the much better striker by a mile here. But, yeah, can't wait to see how this one plays out. I feel like it's a really interesting fight to break down here, Weezy.
Yeah, and Jordan's going to have his work cut out for him here in terms of getting his head right for what's about to happen, because, the crowd's going to get nuts for Molly McCann. And once Molly McCann gets that win, and then maybe if Gustafsson gets a win, that crowd's just going to be foaming at the mouth, and it's going to be, oh, Paddy the baddie. And, I think this is probably the first time that Leavitt has fought outside the country, and to go into that lion's den and fight this guy Pimblett, who's just another huge crowd favorite. I mean, I can't imagine what he's going to be, just because he's going to be in that cage first, and then they're going to bring Paddy out, and that crowd's going to be going ballistic. And Jordan Leavitt, that's going to be mentally, we're going to find out what this kid's made of, because this is a big moment for him. If he finds a way to wrap this kid up like a pretzel and get a win in London against Paddy Pimblett, he changes his life. He absolutely changes his life. And he's a thinking man's fighter. He's a smart fighter. And Paddy, look, you look at the haircut and you say, maybe this guy's made some bad decisions in his life. There's an example of one right on his head. He's got a beautiful head of hair. He doesn't have to look like that. He does that on purpose. It's not like somebody's duct taping him to the barber chair and fucking with him, and then his friends take pictures of him. Look at the shitty haircut we gave our buddy, and then he goes and he shaves his head. He's like, I got to start from scratch because my friends fucked me up. No, he said, give me the children of the damned haircut, and I'm going to wear that into the cage. So Leavitt could find a way to find a moment in this fight. He's a smart kid. He's a thinking man's fighter. He's a tricky grappler. It's going to be so much fun, because we know that on the feet, Paddy's going to be looking to punt this kid's head into the upper deck, and he might do it. Leavitt is not known for his striking. But in the Trey Ogden fight, you could kind of see him thinking his way through ways to not necessarily win minutes with his striking, but to keep it close while leaving himself an opening to find a moment, right? And if there's anybody that I think that might be able to pull this off against huge odds, and they're long for a reason. Paddy's hot right now. He's the crowd favorite. He's definitely the better striker with a lot more power. And we know that this dude is a black belt. So if he goes to the ground with Jordan Leavitt, it's not like he's going to be at this huge deficit or anything like that. He's just going to be grappling with somebody whose style maybe he hasn't really experienced yet. It's a fascinating fight, man. And I mean, I'm a Paddy Pimblett fan. I can't wait to see him fight again. I'm a Jordan Leavitt fan. I think this guy's an intriguing, unique, heady fighter that has proven that he knows what's best for him. He's not going to go out there and bang with a striker because he thinks the crowd will like it. He's trying to win. He's trying to find ways to win. And he's thinking and he's moving those chess pieces inside the cage there, trying to find openings. And I think he might be able to find a couple openings here and really kind of take the breath out of this crowd and put Paddy in a couple of bad spots. But I've got to pick Paddy Pimblett here. I do have to pick him to win this fight. But I don't know if I'm going to be laying the juice on him. Violence does feel like a pretty good play in this fight as well, Brady.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And I was like very tempted on the Paddy Pimblett side. I was gonna potentially have a big bet on him, and then went and watched some of his earlier fight. I guess the one thing I did not like was his takedown defense. Does not look good. He seems to kind of accept getting taken down. And if Jordan Leavitt does get on top, like you said, he's a very smart fighter. He's not going to make mistakes. Jordan Leavitt very well could come out here, take down Paddy Pimblett, have success winning minutes. It's just as the fight goes on, Jordan Leavitt's cardio just kind of falls off a cliff. Like in the Claudio Puelles fight, he looked really good in that first round. The second round starts, his cardio falls off a cliff. He loses that second and third. In the Trey Ogden fight, his cardio doesn't look great, but it's such a slow-paced fight. Like this is going to be an extremely fast-paced fight from the jump, and I don't like that for Jordan Leavitt. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Leavitt could potentially come out here, get the fight down to the mat early, have success. I don't think he submits Pimblett. I'd be kind of surprised if he did, but not completely. Can't count that out completely. But I think Pimblett's going to have a ton of success on the feet here. And then as the fight goes on, I really do like Pimblett to really, hurt Jordan Leavitt on the feet. And then if it does get into the grappling exchanges in that second and third round, I think Paddy's going to definitely be the fresher fighter. Paddy's been 5 rounds. Jordan Leavitt has not. We've seen Jordan Leavitt slow down in that second and third multiple times. I think Paddy Pimblett finishes Jordan Leavitt in that second or third, but I will say I think Jordan Leavitt's going to have success at least early on if he does fight smart, and I do expect him to. So I'm going to be taking a look at this from like a live betting standpoint. If this fight does get out of the first round, I'll be looking to live bet Paddy Pimblett, and then I'll also be looking at – I don't mind some violence as well. It looks like we have the fight goes decision is plus 180. The fight doesn't go decision. Oh, my goodness. It's minus 260. So it is juiced extremely bad. I was not expecting that. The over 2.5 plus 160. The under 2.5 is minus 200. And, yeah, it's kind of nuts to me. I mean, the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 300 on FanDuel. You take a look at, for example, the Craig fight. It's only minus 290. And then you take a look at the freaking Herbert Nelson fight. It's only, minus 245. The Pearce Amirkhani fight is only minus 185. Why are we laying minus 300 for this fight to end inside the distance? So I think that's nuts, although I do think Paddy gets to finish, but Jordan Leavitt's tough. He's never been finished. A Paddy decision would not shock me, but I think Paddy does get him out of there. Paddy inside the distance, minus 120. Yeah, I don't know. I think I probably just might stay away from this one unless I can get Paddy inside the distance at plus money or something. But yeah, just these fight doesn't go props are just completely whack.
Yeah, this one in particular. I mean, these guys have got 4 combined pro losses, and only one of them has been inside the distance. You want to pay, a 66% implied probability for this fight? Or I'm sorry, wait, what was it?
Like minus 300 on FanDuel.
Shit, dude, man, that's 75% implied probability for a division that finishes 50% of the time.
Yeah,
that's a spicy meatball, man. I don't know about that, dude. That's too wide. Yeah, I might just be enjoying this, and it's going to be a very enjoyable fight.
Yeah, we even talked about the line, but Paddy Pimblett is not as wide as you'd probably think. He opened up minus 400. He's minus 250. Jordan Leavitt opened up plus 330. He's currently minus 210. So there is some love there for Jordan Leavitt. He's not a huge favorite like Molly McCann, like a Makayev, like a Dia-kiese, like a Nathaniel Wood. He's a big favorite, but not anywhere close to being the biggest favorite on the card. I think he's like the 6th or 7th biggest favorite on the card, which I would kind of expect it to be wider since there is a lot of hype on Paddy, but I think there's some hype on Leavitt as well. I've seen a lot of love for Jordan Leavitt. So should be a very fun fight. Cannot wait for this one. Probably my favorite fight on the card. All right, we'll keep moving on. We have 2 fights left to get through. We have Jack Hermansson going against Chris Curtis. We have Jack Hermansson, who is 34 years old, 6'1", with a 77-inch reach, going against Chris Curtis, who is 34 years old, 5'10", with a 75-inch reach. Chris Curtis will be fighting up a weight class, usually fighting at 170. This is going to be 185, but that's no surprise because he has fought his last 3 fights, Vieira, Allen, and Hawes, all at 185. So he's going to be fine, but he will be at a height disadvantage of 3 inches here and a reach disadvantage of 2 inches. Jack Hermansson is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a knockout loss against Jared Cannonier, a submission win against Kelvin Gastelum, a decision loss against Marvin Vettori, a decision win against Edmund Shabazian, and then a split decision win or loss against Sean Strickland. As far as Chris Curtis, he has 5-0 in his last 5 fights, made his debut. I believe it was a short notice against Phil Hawes, won that fight by knockout, knocked out Brendan Allen, and then won a decision against Rodolfo Vieira. So this is going to be a big step of a competition for one Chris Curtis going and fighting. I believe Jack Hermansson is, I think, ranked like 6 or 7 or 8 around there in the division. Going from Rodolfo Vieira, Brendan Allen, and Phil Hawes to that is a big step up, but he showed really good takedown defense in his last fight against Rodolfo Vieira. I think Vieira was like 0 for like 20, something like that, 0 for like 21. It was nuts. And he has great takedown defense like a lot of the guys. I think he's doing some work with guys like Sean Strickland, Brad Tavares, and all those guys have phenomenal takedown defense. And you could see that Curtis seems nearly impossible to take down, which is going to be very important in this fight against Jack Hermansson. If Jack Hermansson is able to get him down, Jack Hermansson's ground and pound is phenomenal. His grappling is phenomenal. It's just the question is, will Jack Hermansson be able to take him down, whereas Rodolfo Vieira was not? On the feet, I do slightly favor Curtis, but I think Jack Hermansson has some extremely underrated striking. I don't think he gets enough credit for his striking here, so I do think that the striking will be competitive, but I do have to favor Curtis here. So it's a good matchup. It's a straight pick'em, which is interesting. And we'll talk about the line movement a little bit. Some really weird line movement on this one, Weezy. But yeah, nonetheless, it should be a very fun fight. And I cannot wait for this co-main event.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the tail of the tape here for Hermansson. 3 inches taller, 2-inch reach advantage. But it's Chris Curtis with 8 more pro fights and about 150 more minutes in the pro cage. Also about a year more as a pro. But at the UFC level, it's Hermansson who has 10 more UFC level fights, about 100 more minutes in the UFC cage. So when we're looking at finish rates for these guys, 77% finish rate for Hermansson, 58% finish rate for Curtis. And Hermansson has been finished in 4 of 7 losses, while for Curtis, he's been finished in 2 of 8 losses. Hermansson landing over 1 more significant strike per minute than his opponents are. He's also throwing almost 3 more significant strike attempts per minute than his opponents, 44% accuracy, 0 knockdowns in 14 fights. So Hermansson can win minutes on the feet, but he's probably not going to win moments. And he has been knocked down 3 times in 14 fights. Now, Curtis is landing about 1 more significant strike per minute than his opponents are. He's also being out-volumed by his opponents. They're throwing about 1.1 more significant strike attempts per minute than Chris is. But Chris is throwing and landing with 65.5% accuracy. And he's clocked 3 knockdowns in 4 fights. That's averaging out to 1.18 knockdowns per 15 minutes. Striking defense isn't good. It's sub 50%. And his opponents are throwing more volume than him. But the fact that Chris is so accurate is kind of making up for that. And that's why he's still landing about 1 more significant strike per minute than his opponents are. And he's landing with power. So he's winning those minutes on the feet. Now, Chris Curtis has stopped all 26 takedown attempts against him at the UFC level. That's 100% takedown defense. And he's attempted 0 takedowns at the UFC level. So he's one of these delightful fighters that's very easy to handicap. You know Chris wants to keep the fight standing. You know that he's not really looking to grapple, especially against somebody like, Brendan Allen or Rodolfo Vieira, and now it's Hermansson. These are all similar archetypes of fights. And we know that Chris will take a fight tomorrow if you offered him one. You probably wouldn't even have to pay him that much. That's why they call him the Action Man. This guy has fought 37 times in 13 years, and he will literally take on any comer. The only fight that he turned down was against Elias Theodorou, who is known for just hugging people and not fighting. And he said, I'm not taking that fight because that dude doesn't want to fight. So these are two very likable guys. I'm a big fan of Jack Hermansson. His ground and pound, Brady, is next level. It is absolutely terrifying. And once he starts raining that ground and pound down, he's looking for you to pick your head up so that he can get his arm underneath your chin, and he's going to work that guillotine. That odd setup for a guillotine that he gets is very effective. He said he was going to start using it in the Talis Blaydes fight, and he told us that, and then he started getting submissions with it shortly thereafter that fight. It's going to be a great co-main event, but Chris is taking this fight on short notice like he takes a lot of fights, and it is up a weight class, and it is across a pond, and he just fought Rodolfo Vieira less than a month ago. So we got to tread lightly with Chris here. This is a big ask. Like you said, it's a decent little step up in competition for him as well. But, Hermansson's got fighting the more experienced competition here at the UFC level, beating the more experienced competition, losing to the more experienced competition. But, Chris Curtis's win-to-loss ratio of his opponents thus far of Phil Hawes, Brendan Allen, and Rodolfo Vieira is 5-1. So he's absolutely fighting very tough competition. This isn't a huge step up, in my opinion, because I have very high opinions of Vieira, Allen, and Hawes. And I think that those are all guys that are moving up the ladder here at 185 that will be in the top 10 soon. So great fight. I see why the love is coming in on Curtis. He's a very easy guy to like. He's got excellent striking and excellent takedown defense, and he fights that style that says, I'm going to keep this on the feet. I am going to read you. I'm going to get better as the fight goes on, and I'm going to land a big shot and knock you out. I think he can do that to Jack Hermansson. I think Sean Strickland can give him the game plan on how to beat him, because Strickland went through Hermansson pretty easily, man. That wound up being a split decision, but only because Sal D'Amato was in the house. So, I like Chris Curtis here.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with this fight yet. And the line move is just so weird. We have Curtis opened up as a plus 140 underdog, and that got smashed immediately. And then he just got he went all the way to minus 155. And I thought that was going to continue. I thought more money would come in on Chris Curtis. I see a ton of people already in the chat saying he's a lock, he's free money. And then all of a sudden, the last 24 hours, just money's pouring in on Jack Hermansson. So he went from minus 150, minus 160, and just money steadily coming in on Jack Hermansson to the point where we have a pick 'em here. So I'm not sure where this line's going to go. Jack Hermansson opened up a minus 160 favorite. He is currently a pick 'em here as well. So I'm going to be monitoring the line movement here. I don't know. It's a tough one to call, because I think that, stylistically, Curtis should be able to stuff the takedowns here, and he should be the better striker. But what if Jack Hermansson is able to get him down just once? The fight goes to decision, plus 110, plus 118 on FanDuel. The fight doesn't go, minus 150, minus 152. No really strong lean for me one way or another. Hermansson has been knocked out twice, but he's been knocked out by one Jared Cannonier, and he's been knocked out by Thiago Santos. So not sure if Curtis does knock him out. And then as far as Hermansson getting a finish, Curtis is extremely tough to finish. I think it's going to have to be a submission. And again, Curtis has phenomenal takedown defense. So I guess, I don't know, I lean fight goes at plus money, but I don't know if I'll be betting this fight unless Hermansson gets to plus 125 again, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. Money's pouring in on Hermansson as we speak. And yeah, I'm curious to see where the line goes, because I don't know, minus 110 a piece right now. Any thoughts on the time props or anything, Weezy?
Yeah, for this one, I mean, I think it probably goes pretty far. In terms of Curtis, he's been finishing his fights. So 12 of their 18 combined UFC fights have finished inside the distance. That's 66.7%. The implied probability of the line is only 60% at minus 150. So we're getting an 11.2% break over the divisional finish rate and a 6.7% break over the implied probability of the line when we compare that 12 of 18, 66.7% rate to those two metrics. So violence is something that I would be leaning here, but it's going to be a great fight, man.
Absolutely. Should be a fun one for sure. And as is this main event. Before we talk about the main event, if you guys have not already, let's hit that like button. Also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Me and Weezy will be live tomorrow on the MMA Engine YouTube channel for not one, but two shows. Those two shows being at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be doing the main event deep dive for this fight here. We're going to go very much into detail through everything in this fight for probably 40, 45 minutes. Talking from a betting perspective and talking it through with the chat. That's going to be at 6:30. And then at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to do probability, which I encourage you guys to tune in to probability tomorrow because we have so much to talk about, so many over-unders sticking out, so many fight goes, doesn't go sticking out. I think that's going to be a phenomenal show tomorrow. So MMA Engine tomorrow, two shows going on, lots of fun stuff there. But we have Curtis Blaydes going against Tom Aspinall. Curtis Blaydes is 31 years old. 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. Tom Aspinall, 29 years old, 6'5" with a 78-inch reach here. Tom Aspinall is going to be 2 years younger. Aspinall is going to have a 1-inch height advantage, and he's going to be at a 2-inch reach disadvantage. Curtis Blaydes is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win against Junior Dos Santos, a decision win against Alexander Volkov, a knockout loss to Derek Lewis, a decision win against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and then a knockout win against Chris Daukaus. As far as Tom Aspinall, 5-0 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win against Jake Collier, a knockout win against Alain Badeau, a submission win against Andrei Arlovsky, a knockout win against Sergey Spivak, and then a submission win against Alexander Volkov. This is such an intriguing fight. Curtis Blaydes is probably the toughest matchup for anybody in the division. This is going to be a great test here for Tom Aspinall. We're going to see his takedown defense tested. We're probably going to see his cardio tested if this does get out of the first round and a half. Just so many things we're going to see in this fight, Weezy. Definitely looking forward to. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, two young heavyweights with the arrow pointing straight up. This is probably not the last time we're going to see these two guys fight. Blaydes only 31, Aspinall only 29, babies for the heavyweight division. Blaydes 2-inch reach advantage, Aspinall 1-inch height advantage. Curtis Blaydes 6 more pro fights, 100 more minutes in the pro cage, only 6 months more though as a pro, but he's got 10 more UFC level fights. And he's got 140 more minutes in the UFC cage, Brady. That's a big experience advantage. Hang on just a second. Now, Aspinall has a 100% finish rate as a pro and 12 wins. That's very impressive. For Blaydes, it's 70% in 16 wins. So that's 11 of his 16 wins have come inside the distance. Curtis Blaydes only wins by knockout, and he only gets knocked out. There are no submission attempts in Curtis Blaydes' entire career, despite the fact that he's attempted 115 takedowns at the UFC level and gotten 62 of them. So when we talk about this fight on the feet, you got to favor Aspinall. If you look at the numbers, they're both impressive on both sides. But from what you just see on tape, Aspinall's hands are incredibly fast for the heavyweight division. And he's landing knockdowns on 1.85% of the significant strikes that he's landing, and that's averaging out to 2.04 knockdowns per 15 minutes. Aspinall is landing 7.33 significant strikes per minute and only absorbing 2.65. And he's throwing 11.13 significant strike attempts per minute, while his opponents are throwing just under 7.5. So he's ridiculously outvoluming his opponents, and he's damn near outlanding them at a 3-to-1 ratio. So just video game numbers for Aspinall. And he's never been knocked down, and the striking defense is north of 64.5%. Now, Blaydes is outlanding his opponents at over a 2-to-1 ratio. He lands 3.52, absorbs 1.68, and throws a lot more volume than his opponents too, as he throws 6.86 significant strike attempts per minute, while Blaydes' opponents only throw 4.21. 51% striking accuracy is solid. 60% striking defense is good, but he has been knocked down twice in 15 fights. But here's the thing. Tom Aspinall has attempted 4 takedowns in 5 fights. He's gotten all 4 of them. He's out-controlling his opponents 32.35% to 0%. But Tom Aspinall's opponents are Fat Collier, Alan Badeau, a 53-year-old Andrei Arlovsky, a Sergey Spivak who flew across the ocean on 48 hours' notice, and then Alexander Volkov, who got run through by like a hot knife through butter. While Curtis Blaydes' last 5 fights are against Chris Daukaus, Rosenstruik, Derek Lewis, Volkov, and Junior Dos Santos. So Blaydes is definitely fighting the much better brand of competition here. He's beating the better brand of competition here, and he's losing to the much better brand of competition. Blaydes is the wrestler that I've been waiting to see Tom Aspinall against, because despite the fact that Tom Aspinall is such a talented striker, he's had a really easy run in the UFC thus far and has only faced 2 takedown attempts in 5 fights. He's going to see 2 takedown attempts in the first 60 seconds of this fight. He's probably going to see 15 to 20 takedown attempts in this fight if it does go the distance. And when you watch the pre-UFC footage on Aspinall, and yes, it was a long time ago, he folds like a lawn chair when people try to take him down, Brady. So this has been the fight that I've been waiting for, because I know that Aspinall is awesome on the feet. I know he's got a ton of power, and I know he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with very dangerous submissions. So, but I still think that he can be taken down and held down. And if that's the case, this is the guy that's going to do it to him. This is the guy in the heavyweight division that takes you down and holds you down. Romanov can do it. Aspinall can do it, but Aspinall only fights once every 5 years, so we'll see him again when he's 46. And right now, Romanov is not getting this fight. So this is the guy that's going to push the wrestling heavy game plan against Aspinall. And all you Aspinall backers out there have to admit, that he has not faced that kind of wrestling yet. And it's going to be on a completely different level. So you have to be aware of that. However, man, if he does stop the takedowns, he's going to sleep this dude probably within the first 7 minutes. It's a great heavyweight main event. It's one that I've been waiting for a long time. I like violence in this spot. Tom Aspinall has never been above how many minutes in a fight, Brady?
He's been over 1.5 twice, and then he's never been to the 3rd round ever.
Never even been to the 3rd round. This is a 5-round fight.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the finish rates tomorrow night on probability for 5-round fights for heavyweights, but it's good. So violence in this spot is something that I'm definitely looking at, and I think both fighters absolutely have paths to victory here. Aspinall, would be inside the distance, and I also believe Blaydes' best chance is inside the distance, because if Aspinall does have to wear Curtis Blaydes' weight, if this does wind up being a wrestling match, we're going to find out a lot about Tom Aspinall that's missing information as far as I'm concerned right now, because Volkov doesn't attempt takedowns, Arlovsky doesn't, Badeau doesn't, Fat Collier doesn't. The only one that does is Spivak, and that was a very short notice fight where Spivak, like I said, got on a plane from Moldova to Las Vegas like 3 days before he was supposed to weigh in. So I don't know what to make of that performance either. I'm still waiting to see what happens when somebody wrestles Tom Aspinall, and I'm going to get to find out what happens on Saturday.
Yeah, this is such a freaking tough fight. Like, I'm not even thinking about touching this fight from a money line standpoint, and it's lined pretty close. Tom Aspinall opened up as a plus 100 dog. He's now minus 126. Curtis Blaydes opened up minus 120. He's currently plus 106. And you could argue Blaydes should probably be the favorite here, right? But it's hard to deny the run Aspinall's been on, how he's been looking. This fight is going to be in London. have really any interest in betting a side here. What I do have interest in is betting some violence, Weezy. Right now they have the fight doesn't go on 5 dimes at minus 185, which is just it's mind blowing to me. And then on FanDuel it's minus 210 here. The reason being, you take a look at Tom Aspinall, like you said, he's been over 1.5 rounds only twice. He's never seen the 3rd round. Tom Aspinall has a 100% finish rate in his wins, a 100% finish rate in his losses. Curtis Blaydes has been finishing all 3 of his losses, all by knockout. In their combined 4 losses, all 4 of them come inside the distance. We have a 5-round fight here. I could see Aspinall maybe locking up a sub early, knocking out Blaydes, especially early. I think that's definitely on the table. But if Blaydes is able to take down Aspinall, have success, I could see a Blaydes knockout as the fight goes on, TKO. So I think instead of messing around, betting a side here, because I really don't know. I mean, both these guys, I'm high on both these guys. Instead of messing around betting a side, I'm just going to bet violence here, call it a day, hope for an early Aspinall finish, hope for a Blaydes late finish, sit back, enjoy the fight, and root for some violence here, Weezy. That's my goal.
I'm picking Blaydes. I've been waiting to see Aspinall have to wrestle, and that's why I'm picking Blaydes here. But yeah, dude, I'm betting violence because I am not deluding myself into thinking that Blaydes doesn't have a chance to wake up looking at the lights wondering what happened here. This is such a great main event, and this is such a great card, man. I cannot wait to watch these fights.
Yeah, someone in the chat said it earlier. Like, this card feels like a pay-per-view, right? Like, this card feels absolutely like a pay-per-view. And honestly, like this card right now is better than UFC 277 next week, a pay-per-view that we're gonna have to pay like $80 for. That's getting completely torn apart. I saw another fight just got knocked off as well today. I forget which fight it was, but yeah, we're losing fights left and right on next week's card. But as of now, UFC London, 14 fights, 14 bangers. Mandy Bum, Victoria Leonardo, and then just so many great fights. So definitely looking forward to it. Weezy, any final thoughts on the way out? And also let the people know where they can find you and then what you have going on throughout the week for some UFC London content.
My final thoughts is that I'm going to be a lot heavier on this card than I was on the last 2. I'm really looking forward to these fights. You can find me tomorrow on the MMA Engine YouTube channel, not once, but twice for the main event breakdown with Brady and for probability with Brady. On Tuesday night, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy, 10 o'clock Central Time. We will go through all 14 of these fights, give you a greasy 4-leg parlay, and as always, finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. And then on Wednesday, you can find me on Pub Sports Radio again for the DFS show. And other than that, the only order of business left is to stack cashed tickets like flapjacks for UFC London, Brady. I can't wait for this card.
Yep, I cannot wait either. Have a ton of action already online, and after talking through it, just like so many spots stick out. So going to start getting some bets in probably after the show, and once these lines start getting out. But yeah, should be a pretty fun card. Hopefully make some money and just enjoy watching the fights in general. But you guys can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers. Instagram is DFS by the numbers. Here on YouTube, DFS by the numbers. My full card breakdown will be out early tomorrow afternoon. Other than that, MMA Engine tomorrow, 2 big shows. Main event deep dive is going to be so much fun. And then especially probability at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time after the Die Hard MMA podcast. I cannot wait for that one as well. Leave a like on the way out. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. We do appreciate it. And thank you all for hanging out. Best of luck for UFC London, and we'll talk to you guys.